black and white.
I'll be right back.
Black and white. I do.
Does anyone want anything to drink?
Accident.
One time I got through the window. This time I got through the window. Quite a kid.
Don't break it.
I know a lot of stories about you, Andrew, when you were a kid. And all about sturdy, youthfully disposed.
Everybody's gonna come over well on my family.
I wouldn't mind just kind of walking there.
Yeah, we can discuss.
Are we recording?
No, it's not public.
It's probably being recorded, all these stories.
Has somebody pressed the button over?
Been on the record?
Okay, strike everything was said from the record. No, we're starting again.
She's been in the hospital all day.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. We don't know what's wrong with
How old is your daughter?
her. She's 5.
So that's big.
She can't walk at all.
Hello.
well, I just discovered buying a dog prescription over the cost of the prescription. It's $50 for the
Biggest one right here.
Where now?
Presentation today.
Yeah.
If this were to ever happen.
That's true, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you know what? We'd be on the map from Fort Collins down to Bedford.
Scott's not joining this.
No.
Taking notes. That's very
It's attached to
In other words, come to fruition. You have generations of kids raising your name, Scott, for making this happen.
You need
And
a
adults.
Little League ballpark in there, though.
Nice. There's so much stuff in here. It's unbelievable.
And that was attached to something in our packet.
Yeah, it's attached to
You'll have it, you have it.
a weekly newsletter,
I don't have that.
Yes, yeah, you got it to digest 2 weeks
a
ago.
weekly digest.
Oh, okay, yeah, all right. I have that.
I mean,
I thought we were talking about this back.
So they pulled back because we're not ready?
Okay.
that's okay.
Who wants to go?
I'll go. Oh. What's that? Yeah, you can go, you can take a stab at it.
Might be big from the short.
We're gonna be double overlapping here. Yeah.
I'm not gonna talk about everything, though.
Oh, you just included everything.
I included everything, but
Oh, great.
I didn't think everything was as important as what I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about.
I also have some digital files that were from the CNL conference.
yeah.
So if anyone is interested in any one of these topics, I have it. And I will give you the digital copy.
I'm kind of curious who made that comment. But did you write that?
Which comment?
The first one.
That came from the opening. In politics, it's good to know a little about a lot of things, but great to know a lot about one or a few things. Definitely.
This is the way that it's written about one or fewer things.
Well,
So that fewer than one thing would be like, you don't know anything, you're a politician. That makes a lot of sense.
I added a few things because it didn't make sense to me just to, you know. All right, so including the opening, I went to 7 different programs, and of the 7, I felt that there was 4 of them that I really felt were interesting and were appropriate for us. And the first one was local purchasing preferences and policies.
Yeah, I also looked at that too. And I'm looking at a few things in that as well.
Okay, we'll chime in as we go then. And And the first thing they came up with, they said that you need to define who or what is considered local. And that could be city, zip code, county, region, or state. You need to make sure that your policy is or definition is clear and easy to understand, because there's going to be times it's going to be challenged. An example of clarity is Longmont's program has a 5% local preference, but theirs is capped at $100,000, the first $100,000. So anything under $100,000 or less, if the local company comes in at 5% or less above the lowest bidder, then they would get it. If it's above $100,000, they have a $5,000 cushion. So if the contract is bid at, say, $500,000 lowest bid, the local company comes in at $505,000, they would still get it. If it came in at $506,000, they would get it.
Actually, 5%, not 5,000.
Well, no, 5% of the first 100,000 of that contract.
Now, that's a preference or a policy that you actually commit to in this
Right.
local preference policy that you set up, as far as, first you define your local, then you define the type of preferences that you are going to lean towards when you define local.
I like the third one where you could also match, you mentioned the match.
Yeah, and there's some upsides and downsides, of course, for all of those. But going back to that one, you could have, like Deborah was saying, a percentage preference with a cap or no cap at all. In that case, Longmont has a cap. You could have no cap, like you're referring to, but then when you get into $1 million contract, that's a lot of money. So, Lamar supports 2 different programs, one for local businesses and one for county businesses. And you can also have a choice of a local firm and having the chance to match it. But then the problem with that is that you'll start scaring away some outside vendors from coming in. And there's a reason why that's an issue down here all this time. You can have reciprocal or absolute preference policies. An absolute preference policy is if any time that you have a local vendor that comes in under the bid, hold on a second, let me pull this up. Yes. Basically, it's just the local bidder is going to get it every time. A reciprocal policy is that if you have your preference policy, say we have a 5% preference for a local vendor. If Louisville does not have any kind of preference, and they go out to bid, and one of our local businesses goes into that bidding process there, Louisville, if they have a reciprocal policy, they will automatically add 5% to the vendor from our town, which would be a disadvantage for us. If you receive a federal grant or federal grant money and it's not stimulus, you cannot limit your choices to local providers. So anytime there's federal grant money involved, unless it's stimulus, you can't have a program like this. So the benefits of local purchasing preferences, it encourages businesses to stay or relocate to your town. There's also the multiplier effect of local dollars. They were estimating it's 2 to 1 to 3 to 1 return, depending on how many of the employees are locally that live locally. You can experience an increase in local tax revenue. You're committing to the local businesses. You have improved relations with the local businesses. Downsides, potentially increases cost through reduced competition, potential for neighboring reciprocal programs, increased administration, and then increased risk of challenge. Of admin or challenges? If your policy isn't clear, then outside vendors can challenge it.
They're good at challenges in that group.
If it's very clear, then I would say it's not, they can still challenge it anytime.
I'm just saying there isn't really a very elaborate challenge, big challenge in the system. So I don't know how they conjure up something that they can challenge.
You don't see that very often usually.
Not in local, in state, city, those things have to be followed. Federal, of course, is not. They protest processes, but I'm not sure what somebody can hang their hand on unless we adopted somebody's system of cameras or something. Kind of all over the business.
recall
But the
they
beauty
did
of-
talk about these more on the challenges. Did they say if there's lots of challenges or no?
They said there was not. In fact, there are none to date that they have heard of. So, I was just gonna mention that, with the local purchasing policy, you can make the rules. You can decide that your local is actually regional
Right.
instead of, have state. I mean, you can be that, you can open it up to a larger area.
Or
You
small.
know, or smaller, you can just say it has to be in your town.
Exactly. And like Lamar does, they have two different local programs. One is local, and the other one is the county.
So if you're worried about this not fostering any competition, you could open it up to a larger area. So there's a lot you can do with this. But some of these ideas are just an idea from like Long and how they handle it.
Yeah. So Louisville and Superior could compete together and do a local purchasing practice. Anything else on that? Did you have anything else on that? Or did you want to take your own time to review?
The only, I can see the big downside, that, there'd be a lot of legal costs involved up front that we may not really want to go down since we're already modifying our code anyway. We'd have to go back and remodify our code for our purchasing policy, and I don't know if that's something we want to go down or not.
And it definitely has to be spelled out clearly. Buy local programs, they didn't actually have the outline on their website, so all we have is just what I put here in my notes. There's two different programs that were presented, Lamar and Durango. It seemed like the Durango program was a little bit better, but the Lamar program was you buy $300 locally and you receive $30 you get from the town, and the town funds that. New purchases, it doesn't include groceries, liquor, or pharmaceuticals.
Can you read the back you buy something?
Yeah. You take your receipt to the town, give them the receipts, they accrue those, and then they give you a coupon for whatever amount it is, $30 in this case, and then you can go back to the local vendors.
Exactly. A lot of money go back.
Right, so you're not allowed to use, to take your receipts from groceries, liquor, or pharmaceuticals to redeem, but once you get the coupon, you take that coupon, go back and redeem it for those. $100 gas card for each new car purchase. They had another program called Love Bucks, $100 worth of spendable coupons for $95, and it said 13 cities have implemented similar programs. Now Durango has made it more of a big deal, raise awareness of looking local first. It's an ongoing campaign. They have a blog, bookmarks, window decals, stickers, events, and a Facebook page. They said the secret to their success is mascot fun. Yeah, their local mascot is Buck, and it's this guy that runs around in this costume that looks like $1, and his name is Buck. He goes to every event that they have.
They videoed some kind of video, and he came in.
Yeah, he did.
A little corny, or was it okay?
Oh, it was corny, but it was clever. It was fun.
Yeah, it was a good idea.
He was riding a bike in the bikeways, you know, it was fun. I also went to that one. Lamar and Durango are different from us in that they are sort of their own centers geographically. They don't have competition right
They're kind of isolated.
down the block, yeah, like we do with Harrisville and Woodfield. So you have to sort of tailor this by local because we can sort of warn that there is sort of a backlash. If you start promoting guys that you're not, and then you've got Louisville, you can get upset. But if you really get aggressive about it, but so the thought I was left with was there certainly is lots of room for collaboration between Louisville and Superior to do some sort of bylaw that benefits both communities. So that was sort of how I would take it. The one benefit was simply attitude by getting the air of being proactive to try this on the way home, and we just thought it would sort of be fun running off the coal mine thing.
Coal miner.
Having, some sort of coal mining thing that both created a little bit of a brand for the town, as well as possibly played into the whole biological aspects or the purposes. Well, you have to get creative, don't you? Get stuck on that.
I think it was Yosemite Sam or something like that.
Maybe Sam I can go with. Big whiskers, loud voice, kind of cranky all the time. But
We can find
coal miners,
something that serves,
Let me ask one.
we can find something that serves both purposes, that also is, contributes to long-term brand of the community.
And speaking of that, I'm wondering, do we have a moniker at all for town?
A slogan?
What?
A slogan?
Yeah.
Um,
Like,
Have we thought about that before? We have. That's about it.
there's one that I went through this weekend, forgot the name of the town, or Dumont, or something like that, and it says, moose capital of Colorado, There's lots of moose there, well,
That is part of the whole branding thing, I support all that in terms of the.
You can have we, the word are underlined, we are superior.
Yeah.
Something like that.
It doesn't have to be anything more than that. Colorado Superior City, it doesn't have to.
Colorado superior city.
You don't have to go much bigger, it's simple, it's something across, but anyway, that's all I have on that.
Okay. It's a nice way of word though. Different one, but a little arrogant.
arrogance.
Okay.
The next event I went to was sustainability programs anyone can develop. And one of the companies that was there that helps municipalities implement programs like this is Downtown Colorado Inc. And first, we identify what is sustainability for your town. It could be green communities, it could be smart growth, historic preservation, keeping the youth in town. But it's got to be driven by the community. Yeah, driven by the community. What is not sustainability? Trying to exist in a reality that is past. So trying to live in the past we just can't do moving forward. How can we be sustainable? Understand the community. First, get the stakeholders involved. Identify all the stakeholders in town, much like we talked about during the campaign. HOA, chamber, the town, perhaps the schools. Build communication systems and partnerships, volunteer skills, needs assessment. What they would do is they would identify all the volunteers that they would need and the individuals that fit in those categories and what kind of skills they would bring to the table. And then engaging visioning tool or plan, and they create an action matrix such as this, just identifying everything that they need to do, who's going to be responsible for it, and then tracking. Case studies, there's 3 case studies, and after I left I realized that each one of these case studies all of these applied to, I think, where our town is currently. Wheat Ridge was rethink design, Hayden was engage the community, and Montrose was collaborate and reduce duplication and cost. So with Wheat Ridge, rethink design, focus really came down to one street. And the question was, how does Wheat Ridge want to use their streets? Is it going to be for walking, pleasure, and convenience, or is it going to be for cars? Of course it's for cars, but if you've been to Wheat Ridge and you've seen the traffic there, it's an issue. And is it meant to get to a destination as quickly as possible? And essentially what they ended up doing is redesigning the striping on the streets and adding a facelift, more plants and trees so that when people walk, it's more pleasant for them to walk along the streets. When they restriped it, they made it so it wasn't as difficult if you had to turn left through traffic, that it wasn't as difficult to do that. You didn't have to turn through 2 lanes, you only turn through 1 lane. So it made it easier for people to walk, but it also made it easier for people to get to locations via their cars.
It was a dedicated center lane, center
That's correct.
turn lane.
And then the
Either
second
way.
lane on either lane, before you got to the intersection, it made you merge over into the 1 lane or the direction. So it made it easier to turn across the coastal line. With Hayden, engage the community, they used a 4-point approach. And moving forward and developing around what we currently have with what we currently need. And the first point that they looked at was organization. Organization is the vehicle by which people come together to identify areas of common interest and decide strategies for moving forward. Promotion involves defining an image for the downtown and marketing that image to people within and beyond the community. Economic restructuring is the acknowledgement that the market for downtown has changed, and we need to understand the forces of change and what that means to future development. And then design, pretty self-explanatory. The design represents the physical image as well as the manner in which downtown functions, both publicly and privately. So again, this one clearly would be a program that we can implement here as we move forward with the town center and some of the other projects that are slated. And then Montrose was collaboration, focus to increase level of collaboration between organizations currently working towards improvement. But I can't remember if it was the town manager or if it was the planning manager. But on a Saturday, someone came to him with these ideas, and he immediately went to the town board and other stakeholders, and he wrote letters with an idea. And they, within 2 days, they had this program rolling and moving. They had done.
And that was the alarm by local.
Was it?
He did that too.
Okay. What happened?
Race
Right, that's right, he did. But this gentleman targeted these letters to the board and other stakeholders and communities and got them out, got this program rolling for them. Where and how are you spending your resources? You need to identify what you consider downtown. And they felt that one entity was to coordinate all events instead of having everybody do different events but towards the same goal. They tapped into schools, seniors, and libraries to set up a volunteer program administered through town hall.
Which kind of coincides with what they called Unified Web Portal, where it was all the different, like the chamber, the downtown association, the town, all the different entities of government and resources of your town would all be on a unified web portal. And it would have a unified look. So it wouldn't be like a link that sends you over to the chamber. It is actually a tab that you are now in the chamber. You go to another tab in your town of Superior, you go to another town, tab in your, in the downtown association or whatever your different entities are. And that was, I thought that was a great idea. I think that's something that we should look at. Because I went to this same session that you did, and that was something that really struck me as an idea that I think that we should consider as a website that unifies the entire community, and instead of separate designed websites that you link instead of all. We did. It didn't go in there.
These would be things, though, that when we launched the Economic Development Council, that these would all come out. These would be starting to track and all that. I just put medical marijuana.
Can I add a few more things on sustainability for downtowns? Also, DOLA, which is a Department of Local Affairs, thank you. They can come in and evaluate sustainability for your town. And I got somebody's card. If we're interested in doing something like that would tie in with our town center vision. See where we go with that. I also sent an email to everybody on it. Today or around 2. I'm sure Scott got it. I'll talk about it in my report section on Dr. Cog, but it does kind of tie into the sustainability, but it involves federal grants. But anyway, we'll get that later. But Scott, you got my email? You didn't get it either?
I didn't get it.
Okay.
But it came out this afternoon.
I didn't write it.
Okay, I used that town board at, oh no, you didn't get it. Okay, I'll send it again. And Scott, you didn't get it either.
No.
And I sent it directly. All right, I'll resend it.
Okay. And then the last one, the that I felt was important was,
You get to the medical.
Sandy's gonna cover it, and she probably has more notes than I do. Positive council manager relations. And this gentleman, he said he's worked with our town before, Gary Suter. Yeah, it was a really good breakout, and I wish that he had posted his outline. I'm going to get in touch with him and see if I can get a copy of it. So this is just from notes that I had. And essentially he said when relationships aren't healthy, progress is stalled. When they're healthy, the sky's the limit on what you can do. And I agree with that 100%. Civility and respect are basic fundamental values you must have. And we really focused on establishing protocols, identifying roles and methods in which we communicate, not just with town staff, but also with residents and also council to council, how we communicate in meetings. We broke out into groups, 3 groups, and we group I was in, focused on protocols. That ended up being kind of the most important one of setting up the protocols and why we really need those. But essentially, we set up protocols on how we communicate with each other. We have protocols. It relieves pointing fingers and personal attacks at staff or council or singling out residents. Provides the ability to overcome distrust and gives everyone the opportunity to get their idea heard. Council to staff, council to council, staff to council. And everybody in there loosely follows Robert's Rules of Order. They don't abide by it to the letter, but they loosely follow it. They have constituent protocols, how we work in outside meetings, new council orientation, which we already do, but they also discussed adopting protocols. And when new council members come in, you present these protocols to them and get some buy-in from each of the new members. Council direction to staff, the attorney, and you must stick to the protocols and enforce them. If you have them in place, that's great, but if you don't enforce them, stick to them, it doesn't really do you any good. We also broke it out with the council, sets the policy, which is the what, then you have staff, which is the administrators, and the how we get things done. And that's it. There is another section here, but I didn't think it was really appropriate. It was what's a planner to do in these challenging times. Did you write up on that?
Yeah, I did one this little bit. I heard it from you. I put it on here. So I was important. The most important session I was number 1 is technology and media. And 2 important things to know that actually the second goal is the most important, but obviously we are part of that at first. Their IT director, Michelle Hubbard, is moving the whole city of Arvada away from emails and an email-based system and going to a social media-based system, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and she had a whole page of the different ones. MySpace was still on there, but the 2 primary ones are Facebook and Twitter. And Deborah, I wish you had attended this.
Yeah.
This is your bailiwick. But it was a very impressive program, and Michelle has volunteered to meet with us as a board, in an off-site or with some staff or whatever to share her thoughts on that issue. But it did seem to me to have significant potential. The second one was very impressive. It's the city of Littleton, Chris Hardwick there. And he showed how Littleton uses Granicus Media Manager software. And I printed a page off their website on the back, which was a great discussion of what Granicus is. But in short, what it does, you no longer do the verbatim minutes. You do just the, basically the phrase, reports, Deborah Williams, and it links directly to Deborah's part on the video. Chris, same. And so what it does is minimize the construction of minutes by linking into the video. You've got 100% accuracy. There's no disputing what was said, the tone was said, body language which was said, et cetera, et cetera.
So that reduces search time. If there is a certain topic, all you have to do is click that one button.
That's right. And so actually on their staff, they had a guy there who my impression was he actually, so the member of their staff, he actually did this real time while, so the discussion's going on, he actually linked in. And I really think this has tremendous potential for us. So you got the last week on the misinterpretation of what Michelle said, simply because our town board members are never looked into our work session minutes. We could do this for both and thereby, have a complete score correctly. So anyway, for that, we did 5 local campaigns for the two. So looking over to number 3, medical marijuana, some of you may have better understanding than I did going in. But this was a top-notch presentation with one of Kendra's partners with the legal aspect of it. But we were reminded that our ban allows caregivers licensed with the state health department to grow up to 6 plants so you can 5 patients. And yes, that could mean your neighbor. So even though we banned it, anybody in our community licensed by the Department of State, the State Department of Health, as a caregiver can grow up to 30 plants in their basement. And the potential for this is, potential use is great. You've got 30 plants producing a lot of whatever blooms or whatever the operative part of your marijuana.
Buds.
Anyway, I don't ask why you know that, Chris, but anyway.
Everybody knows that.
Anyway.
Southern California.
There seems to be a tendency then to have illicit cell operations out of residences. So, 2 things I put in here, are we monitoring for such abuses? And 2, does our town code cover this potential home use? Does it mandate the upgraded electrical and ventilation systems required to prevent fire and minimize mold?
Who was the police chief from what city?
I thought it was good.
It wasn't Denver, it was like Arvada or something. He provided pictures, and then actually the night before, they just did a raid on a home, and they went downstairs and saw it was a grow operation, but there was wiring everywhere. It certainly was not even close to being code. And he said between now and this time next year, because of the legislation that's coming up, there's going to be several house fires and people being killed because of these grow operations. And there's nothing you can do about it until the police have cause to go to the home. If we see a spike in interest, we can't just go there and say what's going on here, because they're governed by Amendment 20, right? Which is
The 2001 law, is that
We don't monitor it. So we joked about Boulder doing it smart grid. They do have the opportunity to monitor it.
But the town, according to our understanding, you don't have access to a list of who in your community is a licensed caregiver. That's protected.
Right.
And the only way you can enter is with cause. So only if I see that you have cars and more cars coming to your house and staying for a couple minutes and leaving, and they do a sting operation and whatever, that kind of thing. And that's only the way in which you can identify these abuses. So, but anyway.
Our ordinance bans the same in your language. Any sale in town is going to be illicit, whether it's in a storefront, out of the trunk of a car, or out of somebody's
The
garage.
caregivers are licensed caregivers.
That's what this is getting at.
But not, they
Growing
can,
and dispensing
they can
beyond.
dispense it
to
the
their-
5 people,
Right.
but
Right.
not the.
With the problem.
Which is allowed
Yeah,
by
yeah.
the state constitution.
That's right. But the problem that they were finding is that these caregivers were actually growing more than they were supposed to and selling it out back to the wind.
I don't understand, because they don't know.
It's like pharmacies work, right?
We can skip number 4, which is just kids on libraries, and just this 5th one, community.
Can I, real quick, just some interesting point on the medical marijuana, sorry, is it says they said you must be prepared to financially enforce the law. There's 100,000 registered users now.
In Colorado.
In Colorado. And just a couple years ago, it was a couple thousand.
Yeah, no, exactly.
They said, allowing dispensaries could create a low pricing black market. What's that? Oh, right. So anyway, they had some good statistics there. It was pretty interesting.
This was a great presentation.
But why wouldn't we do that? Because I understood, why is that?
Yeah, it has cost.
It's similar to trying to enforce criminal activity.
So the only way that we could have any reason to go into their house is if somebody calls, like Sandy said, if there's a lot of cars coming and going at all hours of the night, someone can call the police, and the police can go knock on the door and say, can we come in? If they say no, they can't go in, they have to do a search warrant, they have to have cops.
It has something to do with their license with the State Department of Health being private knowledge. It is not publicly shared. That's how I understand it. But Kendra,
Yeah.
I'm sure does.
No different. We have regulations that go on. There's so much of the space in the home can be occupied, no employees, no signs. You think your neighbor's selling Amway out of their garage and occupying too much space, filling up the place with Amway products? It's virtually impossible to prove. And it happens all the time. Same thing with, daycare. We have regulations about how many and all the rest, but at the end of the day, trying to prove it, it's like the unrelated.
Exactly.
So when you find out about it, after they had the fire,
But
right?
Kendra,
After we got into the house for some other reason, legitimate reason.
Or if a guy goes on 9 years and comes to
Kendra was in this session actually as just with us watching it, and we asked her about the electrical and ventilation systems, and she said, yeah, we do have to check our town code to see if it controls for at least that aspect of it. So anyway, it's on the completeness. But anyway, under number 5, community building, several communities got up and talked how they develop a sense of community and engage their residents and all that, and I just wrote some things down here. Of course, quarterly or semi-annual town hall forums outside town, the context of the board, where you actually go to the community and invite the community to come and have open mic night, where you can say whatever's on your mind. Community garden, I like this idea of neighbor labor. It's basically a community cleanup day, but it has particular focus on helping neighbors who can't do physical labor. So, get out here and help them plant trees or landscape or whatever. I like this for this bringing into town hall residents who have earned awards, students who have earned kids who have earned their Eagle Award, or students who have won, I don't know, scholarships or recognition or whatever. And they actually come before board meeting, get a little certificate from the board that they can put on their wall. Or simply help the community in some way. One is encouraging Superior High School students who want to volunteer time, which you need to do for the high school resident. To do so here and not do it all around the rest of the county. And finding finding particular jobs for them to do, So I think we put our minds to it if we could. And then capitalizing on one-time events, which I think we're pretty darn good at. Like, for example, our kind of colored trail opening, street parks opening, and actually thinking of ways to engage the whole community and making those a festive time. And then number 6 was planner to do these challenging times. Again, nothing that remarkable, but it did seem to reinforce what we're really doing. What Glenn's director says, during slow times, you update the comprehensive plan, implement an economic development strategic plan, to revise zoning ordinances. That we're all aware of, that was interesting.
On the handout I gave, I added some statistics specifically from Grand Junction on where they were in 1973 to where they are now, like employees and city staff per capita and all that.
From the neighbor labor, then I think that I'd love to see that if people could, at least, get their name on the list, then I would shovel snow.
That's an easy one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
It's known, and, neighbors do that for each other. But there's lots of people that don't know that. And it's not that it's getting used to it.
Another thing, one of these people can do is when somebody cited a code violation, when they remedy the code violation, they get a thank you note from the town. Thank you for doing what we asked you to do. It's just a nice little thing.
So I didn't attend near as many as Sandy and Chris.
What are you doing?
It was in bar.
She had to leave it in early.
And they sent me to some bum ones. Some of them I've already reported on based on Chris and I went to some of the same ones. And then I ended up at a few that weren't worth really hanging out, but I did hang out. So I did attend the library outreach session. I didn't find that real helpful, although the only thing I found interesting that, of course, it's pay to play. It's called Community Connect Service. It uses a database and research tools online for a snapshot of your system users and your uses for your library. So, and after they were explaining it, some people were asking questions. Well, is a snapshot like for an hour, or when it's like a specific time out of the specific year for a day, and you're kind of thinking, well, how is that going to be kind of measurable? But it is a pay to play, so that means the more you pay, the more you will get out of it. I don't know if we can ask the Louisville Library to look into something like this. I don't know if this is something they can do on their own. Obviously, it's a lot of work on your own to do. Yeah, exactly. I will be going to that library meeting tomorrow night. So I just kind of sat there and thought, so then I also attended another one that was, how does your community measure up? It's kind of a performance measurement. Again, I sat through this whole thing, and suddenly they said, pay to play. And I thought, I don't think we want to pay to play. But it's called Colorado Performance Measurement Consortium. Have you heard of that?
What do they measure performance?
So they measure every kind of service that your community has against other communities. And you can see how you measure up against other communities. And you can see, based on how other communities are doing, who's doing well in what area. And then you can find out, well, why are they doing well in police, fire? Why are they doing well in library? Why are they doing well in trash and recycling? What are they doing that's different that we can learn from? And so that's,
How much do you have to pay to play?
I didn't get into that. I kind of sat there and thought, okay, we'll see. But some of the communities, I thought this was interesting to me, but some of the communities in our immediate area that are members are Louisville, Westminster, Thornton, Boulder, Fort Collins, Longmont, Windsor, Aurora, and Wells. So I was a little surprised at Louisville. Cutting that, but
They just paid $5,000.
they just joined.
They're about 3 years behind. Westminster is probably the leader in the country. Fort Collins is close to
Interesting.
Measurement.
They have 2 dedicated staff people year-round devoted to it. $5,000 a year.
Plus the dedicated staff.
That's the big one. It's developing the benchmarks and then doing the reporting measurements. The probably most significant is coming up with benchmarks. We talked about that for our
Right.
contract management.
The key
What do you
goals
want
and
your
objectives.
snowplower to do? Is it response time? Is it the quantity of salt and sand they put on? What are the measures? Benchmarks. And then that reporting mechanism will come back up. And they've done it in all their departments. Westminster is, like I said, head and shoulders above. But
Right. Well, you could basically copy somebody else's benchmarks, their measurements, and their key goals and objectives and just tailor it to your own community. But obviously, devoting it to staff.
Scott, you're obviously familiar with this. Is there an application to our town?
Certainly there is. I mean, Andrew's talked about it in every budget review since I've been here, was we need to have performance benchmarks. And I threw 3 of them out when it comes to snow plowing. None of which, by the way, pertains to dollars or locality. You picking the services that you want. How frequently you water, how much water you devote to irrigation and something. That's a good one to be benchmarking. But you guys need to decide what it is you want to be measuring.
Right. The one thing I thought was interesting is that what you can use with this data is making data-driven decisions for your town and budgeting for specific outcomes. I do have their presentation, which is, I have an digital copy, so I'd like to send it to anybody. Let me know. We have to focus on it.
Force it on.
Yeah, through your email that doesn't
You can
work.
just
Keep sending those emails, Deborah.
Funny.
Your landscape contractor probably be a good one.
Yeah.
How much pesticide do we use?
That would be
What's our motive to
excellent.
try to reduce it? How do we reduce our water irrigation? How do we increase or decrease our tree loss?
Yeah, no,
Those
that
would
would be
be
a good one.
kinds of benchmarks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Landscape.
Somebody asked me about police today, about it. Calls for service, you don't control. You control response. You control things like how much of their day is.
And that was a big, in comparing towns and how well they were doing.
Right.
So I had some ideas I kind of gleaned or took away from it that I thought that would be good for our town to look into. One was the unified community website. Now currently all we have is the chamber. So we could do that. I think that's feasible. And I think that if, on your town website, there's a tab that gets you directly to the chamber and all the resources from that, I think that would be huge. That'd be great.
You might even be able to have the information.
There you go. You could add the HOAs. Instead of everybody maintaining their own, I'm sure you're probably thinking, well, who maintains that and who keeps that up to date?
Or even to have the link.
The link is no issue, issues content.
Yeah.
No, it's not a link. That's the whole point. It's a unified website. It's one website. It's not a link that links you to the chamber site. The chamber is on the town site. It's a part of it. It's designed as part
Could
of
we do
it.
a hybrid, start this concept?
Could, yeah, and then eventually just move it on over. But the whole point of this unified website is not a link that sends you somewhere else. It's tabs or tabs on the side that help you get back to where you were instead of a honeycomb window. And all these different design elements that are completely different from one another, that they have a unified look. So that was one thing I thought was something I thought we should look at. An annual community scorecard. Did you guys sit on that one? Okay, it's a scorecard on key priority areas for our town services and how we're doing. Just reporting how we're doing, a little quick scorecard. And,
Who scored that? The resident?
well, we do, or we could have the residents do it. However, and it could be through our biannual citizen survey. I'm trying to think of, I wrote down who has it that we could look at their scorecard.
Wait, are we moving on there? That's it.
That would be, I believe it's the city of Longmont or Fort Collins. I can't
We got
remember.
one else in presentation. You want to do it down here?
We gotta we gotta put the check back away because we gotta change it.
Okay, all right, so this scorecard is created either at Fort Collins or Longmont. So I was gonna check it out and see exactly, I have a copy of it, but see exactly what they do. But they put just different resources, like they put response time for police and fire services, you know, whatever their seconds are, minutes, or whatever it is. Just to kind of let people know how we're doing in a quick snapshot. And this one, I don't know how people feel about this, but they call it an open book tool. It's designed to communicate your town's expenses on the website, just to create transparency and credibility. So, for example, and Fort Collins has done this, where they take their quarterly or monthly checks they've written and put them on the website, and you see the bill list. And they did say that at first they thought, oh my God, we're going to get a million different questions. People are going to be commenting on why did we spend, you know, $1,500 to this person, who's this person. But it ended up not being that way. And Fort Collins is pretty basic. I don't know if that's a negative or a positive for Fort Collins. That either people are not looking or they're seeing that it's more transparent, and so they're finding that better.
That had been the concern with the process of again, but this would be welcome again, for us.
Right, and they said the same thing, but it did not.
Good.
Did you, you have something to interrupt or summarize?
I have these sheets that I will give you this.
Okay.
I'll send it to you now.
I got mine the same.
Oh, this?
About 4:30.
You got it?
That's what I would.
Oh,
Chris had asked about it. They're generally
Oh,
distributed the
yeah.
second meeting of the month.
yeah, I can give you this. Little ideas, but,
I'll check. I've only been doing that for the last 13 months. Starting last July.
The checks.
Check registers and monthly.
Yeah, you're right. We've been asked to do it a number of times.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Do you need me to state my name and address?
Oh, probably would be best, although we're in a work session, but yeah, that would be great.
Christopher Barnes with Resolute Investments. Address is 7374 South Alton Way, Suite 204, Centennial 80112.
Great, thanks.
I just first want to thank you for being here tonight to talk to us about the Metro District that we're proposing, and I'd also like to thank Scott and Paul and Matt and everybody who's worked so hard with getting us to where it is today. I've got my team here. Alan Pogue, he's with Eisenagel Norton, so thank you, and Tom Bishop with D.A. Davidson. He's our investment banker. We're just going to do a small presentation to you about Metro Districts, then we're going to get a little bit more specific about our Metro District. And just to let you guys know, we show this timeline every time we come up here, and where we're at in the process, and we're kind of tracking online. We're right here in the process, creating service plan for Metro District. So second quarter of 2010, that's done, and we're hoping for your approval in the third quarter of 2010. And so, again, I appreciate your time, and I'll turn it over to Alan to talk about the district, and then I'll be here for any questions thereafter.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Alan Pogue, P-O-G-U-E, 1331 17th Street, Denver, 80202. Legal counsel to Resolute for service plan Metro District related matters. Before I get to specifics of this plan, Chris thought it would be a good idea to just take a quick minute and go through sort of a Metro District 101 type of session in the event any of you are not familiar with Metro Districts, what they do, and how the process works to form them. A Metro District is an independent unit of government, a political subdivision of the state, very widely used by developers to assist in the financing necessary for the infrastructure for new development. There's a map here that shows with some detail how many projects in the vicinity of the Colton project have caused to be organized a Metro District or more than one Metro District to assist in the financing of that infrastructure. The process for formation is actually quite simple. It starts here with approval of the service plan by this body, this board. The service plan that's been submitted on behalf of the Colton project has been vetted in great detail through staff, comments taken, revisions made, and I'll talk about that detail a little bit more. Once a town board or city council or county commission approves the service plan, the onus is then on the proponents to go to the district court and ask the court to order an election be held. And at that election, typically, the question of forming the district will be asked, the initial board of directors will be elected, and then any TABOR debt authorization, tax increase, and spending changes, revenue changes that need to be approved by the voters will be presented at that time as well. Generally speaking, and this would be the case with this district, at the formation stage, the election, it's not developed, it's vacant property. So the statute allows a process for the proponents of the district to qualify individuals to be the initial electorate and then to elect the board of directors, ask the question of whether the district shall be formed, and authorize the debt and the taxes needed to pay the debt back. Assuming that the district court does call the election, you'd either have it in May or November, depending upon what year you're in. Once the election is conducted, assuming that it's successful, the court will enter an order formally organizing the district. And then from that point forward, it is, again, a separate political subdivision of the state, independent unit of government, and it will operate pursuant to the state statute, which governs Metro Districts, and with whatever restrictions or other requirements would be imposed by the town through the service plan process. These districts are authorized to build, finance, operate, and maintain basic backbone infrastructure projects: water, sewer, storm drainage, streets, traffic safety control, fire protection in some cases, no police power, so no authority to provide police services, pest control, and park and rec. The proposed service plan for the Colton project, and again, a little more detail in a minute, does not authorize this district to perform each and every one of those powers, but it's more limited in nature. So that's what metro districts can do. That's how they're authorized and formed. They have the powers that the town has with respect to the imposition of property taxes, the imposition of fees, the imposition of tolls and other charges related to the services that they provide. They can borrow money, they can issue tax-exempt municipal bonds, and repay those bonds from those property tax revenue and other revenue sources. In the case here, this Colton project, the expectation is that the district will finance the backbone infrastructure for the project. Again, it's a 13.5 acre project. It's, currently zoned for non-residential uses. At build-out, we're expecting the assessed value of the project to be $11 million, which the service plan that's been submitted shows you will support approximately $3.5 million bond issue, and again, scheduled based on Chris's timeline to happen sometime in 2013, but again, that's dependent on development. The other powers that the district has, in addition to taxing and borrowing money, they do have the power of eminent domain, so they can condemn property for public purposes just like the town can. They enter into intergovernmental agreements, just like any other unit of government. And in fact, this district would be required by the service plan to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with the town immediately upon the effective date of the formation of the district. So the highlights of the service plan that has been put together and again reviewed and commented on by staff. There is a mill levy cap that this metro district will be forced to live with. For debt repayment purposes, the district could never impose more than 25 mills without coming back and getting an amendment approved by this board. The district could have an additional mill levy over and above that for operations and maintenance expenses. But again, the expectation is that all of the basic backbone infrastructure that this district would finance will be dedicated to the town and then owned and operated by the town in perpetuity going forward. All of the improvements that the district would construct have to be constructed in accordance with the town's standards, specifications. There's a review process built in so that the town engineer will have the ability to oversee what's happening in the construction process. And then again, assuming that once warranty periods have elapsed, the town would take ownership of those improvements. The expected cost of the public improvements for this project, approximately $3.5 million. The service plan includes, in addition to the mill levy cap that I mentioned before, it includes a debt issuance cap, which is $5 million. There's a cap on the rate, the interest rate that the Metro District can pay on the money that it borrows. That's 9%. And then again, all of the debt subject to the 25 mil cap and a 25-year maturity. And those are all of those requirements that I just mentioned come from the town code and the restrictions that the town's already placed in its code for Metro District's new formations. We are requesting, in connection with this district, that you consider an amendment to the code for one provision. The code currently provides that the district cannot incur debt that is greater than 25% of the total assessed valuation within the district's boundaries, with 3 or 4 exceptions. One of those exceptions is if the debt is issued to an accredited investor or an institutional investor. One of those exceptions is if the debt is less than $1 million. And another exception is if the debt is to refund or refinance previously existing debt. The request that we're making, asking you to consider as a code amendment, would be to carve out one more exception to that 25% of assessed value threshold, and that would be for debt that the district issues to the developer. And the reason why I'm making this request is because in order for the developer to use the Metro District concept effectively, the developer has to loan the district the money up front when there's no assessed value, when there's no infrastructure, when there's no vertical construction. The way the code's written, you're not allowed to do that. You can't obligate the district with any kind of debt instrument on day one when there's no development if that debt, again, is greater than 25% of the assessed value, which it certainly will be. So the request is to consider a code amendment to allow the district to borrow money from the developer in excess of 25% of the total assessed value, and then hopefully if things go well with the development, the assessed value will follow once the vertical construction is in place. And the district will then be able to issue tax-exempt bonds through the market, use the proceeds of those bonds to pay off the loans that it made, that it took from the developer initially. And that's actually the most common way metro districts are used up and down the Front Range throughout the state. The risk on something like this is with the developer, because the developer loans that money up front to put in all the infrastructure. If the rooftops or the vertical construction, the houses, the buildings, the offices don't come, the district's never going to be able to pay the developer back, and that's the risk that the developer takes in doing real estate development. If the tax base is there, it will support a metro district bond issue to pay the developer back. That's the goal, and that's what we try to do. So that is, Chris asked me to be brief, so I risk putting you all to sleep. So that's the 35,000-foot overview of metro districts in general and some of the highlights and the specifics of this plan. If there's any questions, Chris, do you want to add anything on to that? Or?
Yeah, we're just here to answer questions and get general feedback from the board.
Questions? Joe?
What time frame were you looking at for the election? Since you mentioned November or May were possible times.
The service plan that's been submitted would permit the proponents of the district a 5-year window of time, and that election would be timed, hopefully, to coincide with an uptick in the real estate market and the commencement of real development activity.
So it's not in the immediate future.
Not in the immediate future, and just as a bit of information, the opportunity to do this in May only exists in an even-numbered year. So we'd be at the earliest November of 2011, and maybe further on time than that.
Joe, just to expand on that, the reason for that is just to avoid all the costs of maintaining a district when there's actually no development. It's just a piece of vacant land.
And along those lines, the election, for the first election is for residents or members within the special district boundaries itself?
Correct.
And since there's nobody there, can you tell me how that, you touched upon that, I don't think I quite understood that aspect of it.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. Yes. No, okay. The statute allows, well, let me back up. Those individuals that are allowed to vote in a metro district election are what the statute refers to as, quote, qualified electors. In order to be a qualified elector, you have to either live within the boundaries of the district, you have to own taxable property within the boundaries of the district, or you have to be married to somebody who owns taxable property. The statute for new organizations like this creates another category or another option, and that is to have a contract to purchase taxable property located within the boundaries of the district and be obligated to pay the real property taxes on that contract property until you actually acquire the property. So what we generally do to qualify electors for that initial election is the property owner, which in this case is the developer, owns all the 14 acres. They will enter into these option contracts with 4 or 5 of the developers, representatives or other, non-related parties. Obligate those individuals to pay the real property taxes on that property, on that option piece, and then they are qualified to vote. And so they are the participants or the voters in that initial election. Once the initial election is done, or any elections that are conducted before there are other property owners or residents, that would still be your pool of electors. Once you have residents or other property owners, individuals owning property, not corporate entities, those are authorized to vote as well.
And along those lines, the town, as you're, I'm sure, aware, we have several special districts, and we use the director's parcel where the town board members are the only persons in the director's parcel. I'm probably not an expert on this. How would that, what's the interplay with special districts and director's parcels? Excuse me.
Well, the director's parcel is a term of art, and so when I use that term, I mean the parcel of land that I would use to qualify the developer's representatives to serve on the board and to vote. When you use it, you're talking about a specific piece of real property that's going to be a director's parcel for every district that is organized or formed within municipal boundaries. What we've proposed or requested in our service plan is that the developer's representatives be the initial board of directors, assuming the election is successful, rather than having the town board of trustees serve in that capacity. And to some degree, I suppose that's a policy decision, but there are some legal implications to it. My concern when I've been hired by municipalities to be special counsel on the other side of the table from where I am tonight is always that I don't want the town to be viewed as the alter ego or the arm of this developer-controlled special district. And so I try to encourage my municipal clients to put the restrictions that you want the district to live by in the service plan, whether it be mill levy caps, debt caps, both, limitations on the powers that they have the authority to exercise, and then let the independent unit of government do what it was authorized to do beyond that. And you have all those checkpoints and restrictions built in up front, rather than being involved necessarily in the day-to-day comings and goings of what the district is doing. So that's generally how I come from.
So when we get a staff report, I'd love to have the pro-con state. I mean, we've had special districts that had much more power that could do much more things where we ran into trouble, and so
Sure.
that was very helpful for us to take over those districts. But I would like to understand, and I appreciate your input, but don't take this. You're going to be biased because you're
Sure.
the representative or the developer, but
Sure.
I'd like to have the independent counsel's viewpoint on that.
No, absolutely, I understand that.
Okay. Any other questions?
I had a couple of questions. The ad valorem tax and the mill levy of 25 mills, is that specific to the district, or is that for all of Superior?
No, just the district.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's it.
Is that- okay. Yeah, the taxpayers would be only those who own property within the district boundaries. So no other resident of Superior or other property owner outside that district would be responsible for any payment of those taxes.
So just to kind of recap then, that would mean there are no residents in that district, the boundaries of that district, correct?
Correct.
And then the only players, or whatever you're calling electors, would be the property owners.
Correct.
And that is all the different developers that are going to be part of this project. Is that correct?
That's correct. The subtlety in answering your question without giving you more detail than you want is the property owner right now is a corporate entity, and corporate entities don't get to vote. So only human beings get to vote. So we have this mechanism that I described before that will let the corporate entity qualify Chris or other representatives to actually go cast the vote. That's the wrinkle that's being dealt with there. Yes?
So taking this several steps forward, you or the Metro District as an entity collects the property taxes. Those property taxes don't accrue to the benefit of the town of Superior then.
That's correct.
How do revenues flow to the town of Superior from having this development constructed in this way?
The hope would be that by allowing the developer to use this financing vehicle, which is what we're talking about, which comes with the ability to borrow money at a lower interest rate because of the tax-exempt nature of the bonds that the district would issue, that will speed up the development or maybe be integral to even having the development in the first place. So you're creating a tax base. You may be creating some sales taxes depending upon the ultimate use, or lodging taxes, or whatever you might have. But the real property tax base would be created because of the use of this district, because you'll still collect your property taxes on that property, and you'll still have whatever other revenues coming from that property that you would otherwise have. This 25 mills is just an add-on for those property owners, and they're aware of it before they buy property, and it's fully disclosed, and it's part of the chain of title and whatnot. So,
Other questions?
I have one real quick.
Okay.
You had mentioned, you referred to the 25% of the valuation, that you can't issue bonds in excess of 25% of the valuation. The property's valued at $11 million.
right, build out.
Build up. Okay.
So right now it's zero, de minimis.
And what that represents is that represents a hotel of about 135 units and 150,000 square feet of office, and then about 11,000 square feet of retail.
And you're going to issue bonds at $3.5 million, so you're asking for an additional, because 25% of the $11 million valuation is 2.75, so you're asking for.
Right. Well, it's really more of a timing thing than it is in how much debt can we issue request, because the value of the property is going to dictate how much debt the district can incur. If the value of the property is $11 million, it'll generate X in property tax revenues, and that's what we can use to pay the debt. So that's not
I see.
something we
Okay.
can really do anything with. But the concern with the way the code is currently written is that the developer has to build the infrastructure up front, because the district has no tax base when it's vacant land. The developer would like to loan the district the money, or otherwise have the district agree to pay the developer back for all the infrastructure that it puts in. We need to be able to do that on day one before the developer starts to put the infrastructure in. And if we do it on day one under the current code provision, we don't get to do it, because that 25% of AV number is going to be zero on day one when they have to make the initial capital outlay for that infrastructure.
Okay.
If I could interject.
Absolutely.
Tom Bishop with the
Tom, would you mind just for the viewing pleasure of our
Okay,
public? Yes,
great,
thank you.
okay. Mr. Hanson, I think a point that maybe you didn't understand is that there are exceptions to the 25% rule, and 25% debt to assessed exception will be applied even when I would market bonds to the public, and not to individuals, but to institutional investors, the exception of institutional investors. So actually, the 25% debt to assess criteria will not be met, perhaps for the life of the issue, because we'll be operating with exceptions in every single case. One of the exceptions Alan didn't mention is investment grade rating. We can probably get an investment grade rating if we ever got to 25% debt to assess, and that would be an exception also. In fact, the 25% debt to assess is very constraining. We must rely upon exceptions. There would be no way to do this transaction without it. And so we're asking for one more exception, which is also standard in most other service plans, where if the developer would own the bonds for a period of time, that exception would also apply. And I think it was just overlooked in the design of the service plan policy.
Basically, without this exception, there's no way for us to move forward with the district.
And creating such a district, I understand how it works with the developer. How would it work for the businesses? Is this an advantage for them to come into, or a disadvantage?
Well, I would say right now it's going to basically put them on the level where everybody else is within this area. If you look at this map, it shows. Would you mind dimming the lights again, real quick, Scott? It shows all the districts around us and where they are at a mill levy versus where we're at a mill levy. And so the Rock Creek site, which is number one up there, with the mill levy is at 118. And you can see the other districts around are at 121. This one's at 98. It's up here. 113, 115, 119, 111, 117. What it allows us to do is market the land at a competitive rate and hopefully draw those users to this site before they go to any of these other sites.
Okay, that's incredibly helpful to know that information. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? I had one then. So thank you, whoever it was that brought up the lodging tax. So yes, thank you. So we're not a home rule municipality. Can't levy a lodging tax. My hope is that someday in the future that we will become a home rule, but that's hard to know. So we would have to depend upon probably a payment in lieu of taxes agreement, where we would have come up with some reasonable number of how that fee would be imposed per unit of a hotel. Would that be part of the service plan? And if it could be, I would for sure want that in there somehow.
I don't think it would be part of the service plan. I think that would be a private side agreement between the town and the developer. And if I understand where you're going, you can kick me if I'm wrong. It sounds like you're talking about some sort of basically a covenant-imposed lodging fee, because you don't have the ability to impose it yourself directly. And that's typically done through private, one public party being the town, and then private property.
Okay, so that's going to be something I'm interested in, and I will leave that also. Thank you for your representation, but I also would like to have the town's take on that as well, because it'd be much easier than trying to have to, if we could incorporate all of that into one plan where everybody knew what the playing rules were. I think that would be helpful for the town, at least.
It's certainly something Scott and I can talk about. The issue would be a legal one, which is, does the Metro District have the authority to impose a fee on a hotel room, the letting of a hotel room? And that's.
And we don't need to decide that
I
tonight, but
understand.
I guess
But that's the issue
I'd
that
like
we
to
have to
understand the
talk about.
legal ramifications of that and whether or not that's allowable. Because that's one way of incenting the hotel. If we could have some sort of rebate from that lodging tax, it actually might stimulate development there. But we would also get some revenue, additional revenue as well.
I understand. Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
From a historical perspective, and where it ties in with your conversation about the lodging tax, when you last saw, or when the town originally saw the conceptual plan review for this particular site, and I believe it was about February of 2009, the developer asked for 4 things for the town's consideration in sequence. First was the rezoning of the property, which we've already accomplished from CAC to RAC to allow for greater density and taller building heights. The second was for the consideration of the Metro District, which is currently before you. The third was the donation or the disposal of the 1-acre parcel that the town currently owns. And the fourth was a wish list on incentives. And we said, we'll deal with those in time, in this particular sequence, when there's more definition to the plan. And the thought process was the incentives to either the developer or subsequent purchasers and developers of the property would be the time in which to obtain the hotel motel through a developer agreement.
Right. I don't want to lose that concept somewhere down the road. Yeah.
Right.
Other questions from the board? So my comment is that we have been loath to impose special districts, but I think in this one exception where it's a non-residential development, I think there's a lot of opportunities to help stimulate that development, which is going to be good for the town in the long term. So while I'm always skeptical about special districts, I think that, at least on the face of it, I'm interested in discussing that more. Okay.
For that feedback, that's helpful.
Yep. Anything else from the board? Okay.
Thank you.
Well, it's nice seeing everybody again, and
Thank you.
we'll hopefully look forward. What's the next step on your timeline? When will we see you again? For this? Yes.
The hearing?
Okay. Very good. Thank you. All right. That brings us to our next agenda, which is our meeting with the Parks, Rec, Open Space, and Trails Advisory Committee. And Juanita, either you were watching or your timing is impeccable.
Impeccable, yes.
Oh, I was watching.
And sorry, we had the informal setup, but we had to move to this for this presentation. So there we go. Maybe we should. Jim, before we start, maybe we can do just a round of introductions, or unless you were planning on doing that as well, for people of the board who might not know everybody.
I do have
Great.
something in here, so.
Perfect. Thanks.
Well, good evening. I'm Jim Payne, 2475 Clayton Circle. I'm a member of ProStack and its current chair. And Mr. Mayor and members of the board, thank you very much for providing us with this opportunity. And our purpose is to update you on what ProStack is doing, some of our recent activities and our planned activities, and where we are on our work plan. I will include some description that you might not need but might be helpful to the viewing public. And the first of those is that ProStack stands for Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails, PROST, Advisory Committee. So that's ProStack. And we are citizens appointed by you, the Board of Trustees. We serve as advisors to the board on PROST issues and as citizen advocates for PROST amenities and programs. And we work closely with Parks and Rec staff liaisons. So, we're guided in our work by the PROS Master Plan, which now dates back to 2005, and predates me, for that matter, and a board-approved annual work plan, it should be, and, of course, additional direction from you, the board, and community requests and input, which we are always anxious to have. Our current membership, there are 9 ProStack members appointed by you: Aaron Atwell, John Craycraft, Darrell McCool, Lars Morales, John Nybarger, myself, Jim Payne, Nathan Ruff, Gregory Tan, and Andrew Wing. And our staff liaisons are Juanita Dominguez, the Director of Parks and Rec and Open Space, and Martin Toth. And our board liaison is Trustee Chris Hansen. And since some of the activities I will talk about go back over 2 years, there's some recent former members who contributed to where we are today, and those are Gladys Forshee, James Ricker, and Brandon Hollander. We appreciate their work. And let me add that we meet on the third Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. right here in this room. And our meeting notes can be followed. They're included in the board packet, which is published once a month for us and available on the web. So what we have been working on, primarily, so much of our activity recently has been on adding 3 new active outdoor park amenities, which I'll summarize here as bike, dog, and golf. But they are: bike is a mountain bike skills course, dog is a fenced dog park, and golf is a 9-hole disc golf course. These 3 are youth, family, and multi-generational amenities. They were suited, coincidentally, actually, the way it evolved, but they were 3 amenities that were very well suited for an active park utilizing existing native landscape, and we had such land within the town and in town ownership. So by locating these 3 there in one place, which was not our original intention, but it evolved that that's what it made sense to do. It allows us to have the additional benefit of preserving some very nice open space in the Honey Creek Lane area, which is between Horizons and Saddlebrook developments off of Rock Creek Parkway. And the common location also enabled us to reduce costs significantly. The infrastructure can be shared: parking, water, taps, things like that, and saving on maintenance since it's all in one location. Everything in this, all of the construction in this project was state lottery funded through Conservation Trust Fund monies that come to the town, and also an additional Great Outdoors Colorado, or GOCO, grant that we applied for and received. And also, I would add, outside of our budgets, but there is a very important related creek stabilization project along Rock Creek through that same area that will enhance the beauty of that area and make the creek more stable. Now, what we also, we've been working on Colton Trailhead and Colton to Original Town Trail. And this is a very important project. It goes back for a number of years now and involves many other players in addition to ProStack. But ProStack and OSAC have partnered on this, the Open Space Advisory Committee, our sister committee, in providing input and for these 2 projects. And also a major connection that has been added at the intersection of Rock Creek and McCaslin, Rock Creek Parkway and McCaslin, right just north, right below the Key Equipment Finance building there, up on the hill. That will also provide a connection from our, in the center of the town, really, from our parks and trails along Rock Creek Parkway and elsewhere to this major new trail. And this will complete a premier, I think by any standard, premier hiking and bike trail loop that will be, I forget the exact number, but it's just under 20, somewhere near 20 miles, all the way around the loop from Superior to Highway 93, east to west, and from Marshall Road to Highway 128, north to south. should be completed by year end or shortly thereafter. It's been delayed, as you and the board know, by unforeseen circumstances and some legal issues. And as I said, this has been a joint ProStack and OSAC advisory committee project to get this, to support this and provide input. All right, that's what we have been focused on recently. What we will be working on, well, first of all, the final design and implementation of the above mentioned bike, dog, and park amenities. And for example, at our ProStack meeting last week, we had a presentation and discussion on the sort of final additional details and features of the mountain bike skills course. So that kind of thing is what we're doing now, and it's very important. It's the last 10%, but it can make a big difference. So we're focused on that. And we're also working at the board's request on a study of the needs of Little League in the town of Superior. We will be having community meetings for Town 9 next phase park development input. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then trail connection improvement recommendations, improving the connectivity of our trail system. Mostly I'm talking here about interior within the town as opposed to out on open space, but mostly in the southern part of town south of Colton. We will also be working on plans for outreach related to the opening of the Colton Trailhead and trail later this year in cooperation with OSAC. We both feel that that's a major addition to amenities in this town, and will provide a perfect opportunity to provide outreach to the town, make people aware of all the open space and its connectivity and the networks that we do have, and it'll be a first-class trailhead, as you know. So we hope to do that, and then work with the Recycling and Conservation Advisory Committee, RCAC, to recommend recycling plan for the parks. And this has come up before, and there's some logistical challenges to doing this throughout our park system. But the idea here is to focus on the new bike, dog, golf, active park location as a prototype, because we expect it would be logistically simpler central points to service any recycling and remove it and that kind of thing. So that would be in conjunction with RCAC. We try to work with the other committees wherever we can. I'd like to talk a little bit about planning principles for parks and rec and open space and trails amenities. And I mentioned before the master plan as a guiding document. We have come back to that more than we had maybe a few years ago, because we think it's an important platform to work from. Now, this is a 5-year-old plan now. It's expensive and extensive work to update, and at some point that should be done. But right now we're still close enough to it, and it's still mostly applicable that we can work from it. But it does give us a comprehensive, forces us to look comprehensively at the needs of the town, gives us a longer-term perspective and a framework, a good framework for needs analysis, such as changing population trends, things like that, and looking at service levels in the different parts of town, because there has been a lot of growth within the town and in different areas since the plan was begun. It also is a great platform to address funding needs and options, sort of big picture, so we can look at and recommend to the board funding mechanisms to meet the needs of the town that might go beyond the Conservation Trust Fund that we work with today. And as I said, it was last updated. So it was last done, it was done in 2005, so we're not updating it, but we are refreshing it and challenging some of its assumptions where we need to. Also in planning, we think it's important, and this is something that we would like to pursue with the board and in maybe a more in a sit-down work session at some point. But we've come to feel there's an important distinction that we need to make and understand between the planning and prioritizing of individual amenities, meaning a basketball court or a dog park or a you name it, and the difference between that and park development. And in that we would include today Town 9 the next phase of the Town 9 park, and potentially let's say the Indiana and North Torrey's Peak parcel, the parcel just adjoining to the north El Dorado K8, which becomes town property under that arrangement fairly soon, and would be a possible location for a park in the south of Colton. Now, we're in our capacity, we're getting requests from neighbors south of Colton for park development beyond what's there today, and our point is that that's a little bit. It ought to be looked at differently than just putting it in a pile of priorities and amenities that we're prioritizing. We need to do both. We always need to have, for you and for staff, an up-to-date list of the amenities that this town needs with some prioritization, but we contend that it's a very different process, so we need to do both. So to look at it this way, amenities, really, we develop and identify the need and the feasibility of amenities before and really independent of any particular location or park, either an individual location or park. So we look at amenities, we're not really talking, and we're really not supposed to be concerned at that stage about where they might go. That comes later. And in park development, it's the other way around. When you're looking at a park, or when a neighborhood says, we would like park development in our area, as they've done in the north and as increasingly we're hearing in the south of town, that actually comes before any discussion of amenities. None of those people is actually interested in or advocating particular amenities. They're talking about a park that they need in their neighborhood. So the order is different. The processes, the community input, the funding, the prioritization, planning, all of those processes are different from the two. So we're like to make that point, and we think we'd like to have ProStack look at it that way and have the board think of it in those terms as we look at future work plans and future budgeting. Now, we're also looking at some organizational things which we would come back to you on, but one thing we have been doing, and this I think we discussed during the last appointment cycle for ProStack members, we're encouraging non-member citizens to participate in ProStack, call them non-member volunteers. We think this is a fabulous way to get people engaged in the process, engaged in Parks and Rec and Prost issues, and then it provides us a source for new members, and this has worked. We've gotten new members this way, and it's sort of become the pattern for ProStack to get our members this way. It also allows potential members, citizens who are interested in ProStack, to get a sense for what we do and understand what we do and what the obligations are of serving. So we encourage anyone who's out there who's interested in Prost and Parks and Rec to come to our meetings, and you'll find that you're able to participate nearly fully in everything that we do. We're also looking at ways to exploring ways to encourage longer-term development of committee leadership positions, and we're leaders within it. We have almost everybody on the committee is a leader in some way in their personal, professional life. That's the kind of people we have in this town. But within the committee, and we've talked with our sister committee, OSAC, about a vice chair position, making that more active, looking at expanding the advocate roles or redefining the advocate roles, and actually that's an item that's in our work plan for this year. So, but those are organizational things we're working on. So finally, we put down a couple of thoughts about how the board can help, what you can do to help us be as effective as we can be. One is, while we think that these presentations to you are fabulous, and hopefully, it's a nice, should be a nice sort of top-line update for any residents who are watching or listening, and that's great. But we do think it would be very constructive to have a sit-down work session with you, tables out front or wherever. And a good time to do that would be at some point during the budget and when the budget and work plan are being deliberated upon. Further discussion of what I was discussing before, that would be one of the things we'd like to do in a work session with you, would be to discuss the distinction I just discussed between amenities and park development. And also your support wherever you can. I know you believe this, but it sounds a little bit like apple pie here, but it's actually not always that easy to get everybody to stop and take the time and let us get the community outreach and input that we need. We try to build everything we do on input from the community and getting their input, and that involves outreach because, as you know, it doesn't come naturally. You have to go out and get to people and get their ideas. So anything you can do to support that in our work plan and in our efforts and in resources within staff, importantly, would be very helpful.
Great, thanks.
Any questions or
Questions, comments? Anybody?
I have a comment. Just I want to reiterate what Jim had mentioned here. The last two ProStack meetings we've had, there's been a big desire with everybody on the committee to get in front of the board for a couple of hours and have a work session just for ProStack issues. There's a lot there, and I think it would be worth it if we can make the time for that.
Okay.
On the Colton Trailhead final stages, is that something? I need clarification on what part of that is Town of Superior, what part of that is Boulder County.
Well, the trailhead is a county.
Right.
Effort.
When you had on there, one of the things you're looking forward to is the opening of the trail, et cetera.
Well, actually, to ProStack and to the advisory committee, it's not a great distinction. Were the town funding that completely, or were the county funding it completely? Our role is pretty much the same thing, and the county, looks to the town for advice and input. And in fact, I think it's the very fact of an expanded trailhead on the level that we have now, came out of OSAC and ProStack, and maybe from other places, but it was something that we felt was very important given the critical nature, the importance of that, what will be a premier facility, that biking and hiking trail all the way around that loop. And secondly, the fact that as you come down from the south into town, it's a very premier location. So it was. So I think we have spent a lot of time advocating and providing input for that, and we work with staff and were shown plans at every stage of the way. Same thing for of course, the trail below Key Equipment Finance, that trail connection from Rock Creek Parkway and McCaslin over to the trail is a town project with easements to connect with that. So
My question, more precisely, is when we go to having the grand opening event for that trail, do we determine the nature of that event, or do we have to work collaboratively with Boulder County?
I'm sure it would be collaborative with Boulder County, and I would hope to some extent collaborative with the city of Boulder, because at the west end of that loop, it's City of Boulder, Marshall, Mesa Trails, and so forth. So I would hope it would be the three of us would cooperate fully.
Along those lines, have you heard from Boulder County when they're, the optimum construction season is going to be coming to an end sometime soon here? Have we heard from Boulder County?
Hi, Juanita Dominguez, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Open Space. Hearing from Boulder County on the construction, they are still committed to getting it done this season. They just have not been
Which
able to.
season are they speaking of?
This season,
Summer?
as in no, in this summer and fall season.
Current calendar year.
Current calendar year, sure.
Okay.
But they'll get that finished this year.
Well, that means that it must be starting sometime soon.
Sometime soon. As a matter of fact, they're working on a couple of different projects that they're closing out pretty quickly, so we should see it moving soon.
Great, thanks. Additional questions or comments? Thoughts? Let's see, I have one well, probably have two. One comment is I appreciate ProStack, as all our committees, about the tremendous amount of work that they do and in a volunteer capacity. I mean, it's really one of the things that's unique about it, this community, the amount of volunteer input, and it's it's great to see. So I appreciate your efforts and all your committee members' efforts as well. So if you could pass that along.
Thank you.
We should trying to think in my mind how we could schedule time. I know that we have a lot of work session time coming up here with Chapter 16 and budgets. So I'd love to schedule some time. I'm having a hard time knowing exactly when we could do that exactly, except it would have to be, I think, an off night. Trustee Gergros.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for your presentation, for your update, and I would like to see that sometime this fall, perhaps.
Yeah. So there will be, we'll be going into the budget cycle here shortly. So I don't know if we'd be able to have an upfront meeting prior to that occurring, but I'm sure that your committee members and yourself are in tune with what the budget impact for parks will be. So any thoughts along those lines? And then as I was thinking about this topic, and it might be harebrained, and it's something that when you can't think of anything else to do, I was thinking, wow, we have a terminal reservoir at the top of the hill. Wouldn't it be great to have a beach? So I don't know if it's possible, but, and once again, it probably has public health issues, but it'd be great to have teenagers be able to hang out someplace during a hot summer day and be able to get in the water.
So on that note,
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and mention something. I would like to see a more updated amenities survey for for Parks Recs,
Well, what we're going to
trails and open space.
what we're getting ready to do is do it sort of non-scientifically, where we are asking people. I mean, we could do it with, that would take money and resources. We could do it online, obviously, with one of those surveys. I get a little concerned about that because they're non-scientific. They can be heavily skewed. So anyway, we'd like to do that. We would do that as much as we can. But what we are going to do now is throughout outreach get people's input on the kind ideas they have of what they'd like to see, which is not the same thing, sort of what you're saying, but not a formal. Now we do, we obviously do satisfaction surveys, and some stuff surfaces in those. Is the one we did last fall, and then 2 or 3 years before that, which is a townwide thing.
I just think it would be good to see.
We're totally. We want that, and we don't want. We really don't see it's our job to generate amenities proposals from the 9 people themselves.
So you knew exactly what I was going to say.
I've said that. Anyone who knows me, I've said that again and again and again. So we're all for that in any any mechanisms we can have. Now, having said that, as you know,
it's how to go about that.
It's not always easy to get that. So community meetings, informal, but at this point we're trying to screen in things, see what's on people's mind, look for trends. But a big question is, because most of what we're getting now, as I talk to people and as people come to us, and as far as I know to you, are questions about what I'm calling park development itself, not about specific amenities. So that's why I think it's important to have a mechanism to address that. Does that answer your question? But I'm all for it.
Yeah, and I'm just saying that I would like to just see it more data-driven than just hearsay. Not that it isn't, but just to actually see it in some kind of
Yeah,
form.
well, as you know, the Prost master plan had a lot of data in it, had grasped, needs analysis and demographic analysis and all that sort of thing. Now, that's very expensive and extensive. That takes GOCO grants in itself just to get that done. So I don't think we have the capability to do that right now. And when you go with quick and dirty research, it can be a little bit. I'm always a little wary of that. I'm a marketing person, so. But having said that, yeah.
We do have now a digital database of emails of residents for the town, and I would think that would be something that we could use to our advantage in creating
Right.
some kind of survey
Right.
that isn't that expensive.
I agree, and I would like to talk to town management about that and staff about that, because, anyway, to answer your question, I agree with you fully.
Sandy, and then Neely.
Mine was just quick. If we wanted to have this board meeting with ProStack sooner rather than later, are you open to us actually meeting with you on one of your Wednesday meetings?
Sure, absolutely.
The second Wednesday of the month?
Absolutely. And I think we need to give some thought to, it could be too soon, because sometimes, there's not a big question about dollars from us right now, because it's sort of, the next 2-3 years are sort
Determined.
of spoken for. So I don't think they're big issues there. It's more long-term, where do we go? And some of the things long-term, if you buy into our distinction about park development and the importance of that, would require some forethought about funding down the road. So I don't know if it's needs to be ahead of the budget cycle, in the next 6 weeks, given the realities of the budget situation. Does that make sense?
Elia.
But yes, I was going to suggest that Wednesday night is great, because our members are all committed. Not all of you can be there, but it's as many of you as can. That'd be great.
Thank you, Jim. Given that it's 7 o'clock, I was going to make a proposal that the Superior Interchange landscaping discussion 2 weeks. Or can we move it after the public comment and consent agenda? We don't have presentations today, but is that Director Dominguez, could you stick around until 7:30 and have it later on? One as well, rather than postponing it for a couple of weeks, if that's okay with you.
Either way. Let's see. So what are you proposing? I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying.
No, well, we didn't have time to have the discussion of the interchange landscaping, so but we don't have a presentation until after the consent agenda.
Yes,
so
yes,
we can
absolutely.
have them come and,
Yeah. Sorry,
discuss.
I was not following you there for a
Yeah,
moment.
sorry.
But clearly we will not cancel them for the evening. Yeah,
Okay, that's what I was saying, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Payne, for all your efforts. I think that we should take a 1-minute break before the next meeting starts, and see you back in a couple minutes.
agenda.
Yeah.
You have to do it at the time of approval.
Yes, right. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order a regular meeting of the Town of Superior for July 26, 2010. And Phyllis, if you'd call a roll.
Sure. Mayor Andrew Muckle.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Elia Gagaris.
Here.
Trustees Joe Zarelli.
Here.
Chris Hansen.
Here.
Sandy Pennington.
Here.
Lisa Stewart. Deborah Williams.
Here.
Town Manager Scott Randall.
Here.
Town Attorney Kendra Burberry.
Here.
Jennifer Colesworth.
And just here, I'd like to say that Trustee Skumas sends her apologies that she can't make it here this evening. So, thank you. With that, let's item number 3, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
I would like to make a proposal to move the presentation for the interchange landscaping improvement proposal to after the consent agenda, I guess.
Public comment.
After the public comment, yes.
Okay. After public comment. Okay, well, that sounds great. Any other changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda with those changes. Motion by Trustee Gagaris, second by Trustee Williams. Further discussion. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. That brings us to item number 4, reports, questions, and issues. Trustee Hansen, do you want to start?
Sure. I attended a ProStack meeting on the 21st. We had a little discussion on the street paving on Indiana. I know it's not their jurisdiction, but we did talk about it, and we were informed that the construction company doing the repaving is using the basketball court for all their supplies. And we were told that for using that, they're going to repave that basketball court for us. So everybody was excited about that. We had a nice presentation on the bicycle park. Let's see. Oh, Lee McCormick from Lee Likes Bikes, 60-page presentation. You guys all got a copy of it. I sent an email today. Essentially what it came down to is he's recommending 4 different amenities within that bike park. One is a continuous loop pump track, which is basically a flat track with high banking curves and some undulation and all that. They would also have a scaled-down version of a pump track for small kids, some dirt jumps of various sizes and various skill levels, and then a natural terrain such as ledges, up and down, rocks, and logs. I visited the Lions Bike Park this weekend, and he constructed that park, and it was real nice. So I'm looking forward to seeing his proposal. As a side note, I also went for a hike at the Marshall Mesa Trail, and I noticed that their trailhead, they don't have any stalls, any headers on the parking stalls. It's just an open parking space, so everybody just kind of makes their own parking spaces. So I suggest that maybe we look into that too, instead of having to go through the trouble. A couple of meetings ago I mentioned that we're going to do a community forum on renewable energy and green remodeling. We've postponed that till September 15th to give the contractors a little more time to give us their information. That's it.
Great, thanks. Trustee Surley.
I have been away, so I don't have anything to report back. I did note that we have 2 budget work sessions scheduled for September, both of which I will be out of town for. And I was wondering if there's any way to juggle one of the work sessions from August to September and get a piece of Chapter 16 and a piece of the budget. And if it's possible for the budget to start, say, by the end of August instead of...
Certainly. First of all, the budget is virtually done. We're in the process of production right now. The board will be receiving their budget next Monday on August 2nd. We've traditionally liked to give the board at least 4 weeks, but with 5 weeks in August, I mean, if the board was so inclined and wanted to have that 5th Monday set aside for Committee of the Whole Finance Committee, we can easily do that.
You're pondering
the date.
Is it the 5th Monday, or were you looking at the 3rd Monday?
I was looking at the 5th Monday is the 31st.
30th or 31st?
30th or 30th. It's important to know the difference.
It's the 30th.
It's the 30th. 30th could, I think, work for me. but I don't know about anybody else. And this is only to suit me, so I'm, obviously.
And we already knew that there were going to be absences for the 2 board workshop discussion sessions on Chapter 16. I don't believe either of the nights we had unanimity in attendance. I think we had somebody missing at each of them.
So I could be at both of those.
I will ask our fine clerk to send out one of her beautiful polling emails to see who's
I
available for the
appreciate the
31st
effort
or
anyway. If it
30th.
can work, I'd appreciate it. I'd like to participate in that. And I would be back for the last board meeting in September, but not the first one.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Anything
anyway,
else?
that's it. Nothing else. Oh, yes, one other thing.
Yes.
I didn't think it was, we just, in the work session, had a briefing from ProStack, which was, I thought, excellent. And I know, ProStack has a 2005 master plan that, and we had recently had a briefing from the Planning Commission, who is responsible for the comprehensive plan. And I don't think there's anything out of sync between the 2005 master plan and the comprehensive plan. But I was wondering, are we tracking that at all? And I know we asked the Planning Commission to consider, or we thought about looking at reviewing the comprehensive plan this upcoming year. And somehow these two should be in sync. The ProStack master plan is a piece of the comprehensive plan, and so there should be some way of trying to keep those on track. And I'm not sure they are. I think they are pretty much, and if they're not, and we do something different, then we're amending the comprehensive plan. But as a comprehensive plan, we ought to be trying to keep the two together, I think. So, just something to think about.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Let's see. I don't think I have anything in particular to report. I was away for a while, and it's nice to be back, and hope everybody's having a good summer. But that's all I had. Trustee Williams.
Well, I do have a few things to report. First of all, I went to a DRCOG meeting last Wednesday night, and they have a top priority for DRCOG is to get support for a new grant program called Sustainable Communities Regional Planning Grant Program. I'm going to try and summarize this in one sentence, so there may be a lot of big words in here. Sorry, but otherwise I'm going to be sitting here for hours trying to tell you what it's all about. So at the federal level, there's HUD, EPA, and DOT. And they have partnered to form Sustainable Communities Regional Planning Grant Program, of which could allow DRCOG to apply for such of these grants for regional projects that meet these specific sustainable planning standards, which in turn could be used to fund some of, say, for example, the Town of Superior's Town Center project. That was in one sentence. Whoa. That was a little long. However, so I am kind of recommending that we look at our town center vision plan in the near future to kind of ensure that we are incorporating some of these standards that they are asking for. And they're also asking for a resolution of support that we all sign as a town. And I would be happy to bring that, excuse me, that forward as far as the resolution and the little bit more information about this. But that's just kind of it in a nutshell, quickly. And then also DRCOG passed what they're called the Denver Union Station funding for improvements involving the Fast Tracks plan, which this incorporates a multimodal transportation hub, including light rail, current and future rail lines, commuter rail stations to serve for Amtrak and some of these other lines that would go like North Metro, Northwestern rail commuter lines, and then also extension of the 16th Street bus transportation. So this is a kind of a key for our future as far as transportation in and out of Denver. So that's all I have on that. One other thing, I haven't contacted MetroQuest. If everyone recalls what that is, it's kind of a scenario planning tool that you conduct workshops, and it kind of gives you the future growth of your town and how it relates to the metro region. And if we're interested in that, and I didn't really get information from any of you if you were interested or not, I'm still happy to get the ball rolling with MetroQuest and at least get more information on how it would specifically work for us, if anyone is interested in doing this.
I'd say information is always helpful. I mean, I think that we have a pretty concrete, not concrete, but, pretty detailed, comprehensive plan, but, maybe it'd be helpful.
It would most likely involve them coming down with a little presentation explaining exactly what these work sessions would be.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're interested.
Maybe they could forward us some just general information.
Okay. And then also, Dr. Cog has an orientation meeting for August 26th, and it's open to all elected officials. Board members and alternates are all welcome. If you want more information about Dr. Cog and want to see what more they do, you can attend with me.
I think those are always very helpful. Dr. Cog obviously is a big participant in regional activities, and if you have any interest in those type of topics, very helpful orientation session. Trustee Gregorous?
That concludes.
Trustee
my-
Gregorous?
Oh, I would just, I think given the amount of work sessions that we have coming up within the next 30 to 60 days, and the importance of us as board members meeting with ProStack, I really would like to second Trustee Pennington's idea of maybe us adjusting our schedule and going to their meeting on a Wednesday night. As many of us as can make it, I think if we can all make that, be great, but that's a great idea. So I would
Just let us know so that we can post it as a board meeting, if there are going to be more than 3 of you in attendance.
Right. What I understood from Mr. Payne, I think that he was thinking about the exact timing of this. I wasn't sure where we left that, and he was getting back to us.
September maybe, or-
Yeah. So.
In concurrence with the budget.
Yeah. So.
Perhaps we could do it in October. That's when construction will start for 3 parks.
Okay.
Or sometime after September.
I don't see any downside to that, but once again, we'd have to post.
And just as a reminder, it's the same night as Dr. Cog meetings. So.
Huh. Okay.
I'm sure we would get more than 3 members though to attend ProStack. So I would like to see it.
Anything else? Trustee Pennington?
That's second Wednesday of the month, correct, Chris?
I think third.
Third Wednesday of the month. So that would be third Wednesday of October, third Wednesday of September. So
Either one would be.
maybe
third Wednesday
maybe
of
Phyllis
September.
can include that in her poll. That would be great. Mine's very short. Louisville Library Board meeting tomorrow night at this time, and we're going to be doing quite a lot, including doing the inaugural work on the user survey and potential enhancement of some of the services that are provided to both Louisville and Superior. So I'll keep you abreast of that. The other thing is National League of Cities is having their annual meeting in Denver this year. For elected officials, November 30th to December 4th. It says register now for the cheapest rate. So just wanted to let everybody know. And I don't know the registration deadline. I couldn't find that anywhere I was looking. Well, just a sec here. It says September 15th in this very dark section of this. So anybody interested in that probably should be thinking about that. And then regarding MetroQuest, as we, both Deb and I sat through a presentation at a Dr. Cog meeting, and it was very powerful, and I'd suggested for at least, at a minimum, the board members and any member of an advisory committee and any public who have any interest in this area, particularly as we go into reviewing comprehensive plans or town center visions, because it allows us in one fell swoop on a real-time basis
to play around with our future and see it on the screen as to what it would mean to go more multifamily versus single family. I mean, it's all instantaneous, and it's very relevant presentations, so I would strongly encourage us to tie that into any sort of reviews we do of our long-term development plans.
Okay. Anything else? Mr. Randall?
Very briefly, you did receive a most recent report on the follow-up to the graffiti discussion we had of 2 weeks ago. We have had 7 more reported incidents. I am pleased to, well, that's a disappointing report. I'm pleased to report that we're accomplishing our charge, which was to have any graffiti on public property removed within 24 hours of it being brought to our attention. I've had a number of instances where I've received a report, passed it on, and by the time I can go make a personal inspection, it's already gone. So both the town staff and our vendor are doing a great job, at least on keeping on top of that, as is the police department in attempting to nip it in the bud. I've already discussed or shared with you the budget calendar, and you will be receiving the budget next Monday on August 2nd. Whether we meet in August or in September, the board has traditionally set aside at least 2 work sessions in which to complete its review, but we'll go ahead and do the polling and find out. Last, but certainly not least, is the report on sales tax. We continue to do extraordinarily well. I'm not aware of any other municipality within the region that has sales tax as strong as the town of Superior. The month of May, which is the most recent month reported, was up 10.7% from last year. And for the year, we continue to sit at 9.66% above. Now, we know that's somewhat inflated because of the change that we did last year in vendor fee collections, where the vendor was actually allowed to keep a percentage of the sales taxes they collected for the costs of administration. The state undid their fee, we undid their fee, so that we're getting 100% of the sales taxes that are collected, not the amount after the vendor fee. So we know that January through June are modestly inflated, but it's still very, very strong, and again, better than any other community I've seen or heard. So hopefully we can keep that trend going.
Great, thanks. Ms. Carberry? Town clerk? All right. That brings us to item number 5, which is public comment on consent agenda and non-agenda items. And if you have comments, if you wouldn't mind, at the mic and name and address if you could. Sure.
We represent the same issue.
That's fine.
Don't feel bombarded. My name's English Hopkins, and my address is 1661 Everett Way, and I'm also the on-site manager at Saddlebrook at Rock Creek. And so I'm here regarding the Hodgson-Harris Reservoir. This afternoon I spoke to Boulder County, and they stated that they're not going to fill or refill the reservoir because it costs too much to repair the crack in the dam. But they said that they were considering, I think, cutting a line in the emergency spillway and filling it up 10 feet, but they had stopped because of other reasons. So I have come as a representative of Saddlebrook to just see if you all have any sort of influence on their decision, and if so, if you're willing to plead our case. Because, you know, I understand that Boulder County's perspective is they have, there's a lack of financial benefit for them because of the water shares going to just one location. They're not going to go to lots of different people to help them with what they need. And so because of that, they're reluctant to just dump all the water into one spot. However, it's going to dramatically affect all of the units that face that area of the property and create a direct impact on the property values for those units that already have a low property value. So, so I guess that's it. If you guys have any sort of influence and you can speak to Boulder County and
Was it the dam is structurally insufficient that they would have to repair it, or they just didn't want to use the water shares there?
I was told there's a crack in the dam and that it costs $500,000 to repair it, and they don't want to spend the money on it. So
Okay.
You know, you can use, you guys have a lot of money from our rec fee. You can take all of that and apply it to the dam repair.
You all don't have any information on this
I
issue?
Is it on 88th and Highway 30? Yeah.
Yes.
In our Open Space Advisory Committee meeting, we discussed it. And we didn't discuss that there was a crack in the dam. There were obligations from that property owner given to another property owner, which was, I think Juanita might know a little bit more about this. It was discussed in an open meeting. As far as irrigating, I think it's a Rock Creek farm, if I'm correct on that. And I believe the dam is either not sufficient at this time, but I didn't hear anything about the crack in the dam. So if you're getting more information than OSAC is, that's great. And we were going to come to the board and at some time soon here and discuss if we could use open space funds to help Boulder County in reconstruction of this project, the dam. So that's as much as I know. And I believe OSAC wasn't quite ready to discuss it with the board, but I thought I'd at least come forward and say I do know about it, and we are talking about it. And it was also, I think, put in one of our weekly reports. If anyone does recall reading it, you do recall, yes.
It came up at ProStack last week, too.
Okay. So we are looking at it, and it was, a motion in OSAC that we all agreed that we were going to bring to the board.
Okay, but I guess one of my main concerns was when I was speaking to Boulder County today, he said that October is when the ditch system and the water system shuts down for the winter. So if nothing is done between now and October, then it will remain the way it is, and it'll
until next
spring.
Right.
So,
and
anybody's going to buy anything over there, they won't buy it all winter.
The impact on the property is just, I don't know if you're familiar with the property or not.
Yeah.
We were charged a premium to be on that lake in the first place.
I'm sure you were, yes.
And now it's a mud puddle, basically. Do you have any further information as far as this crack rumor?
No. I did not hear about the crack.
Okay.
Well, this is what I don't think that we're going to be able to, well, one, the short version is, no, we don't have any power over Boulder County. Technically. We all have contacts there, and we can see what's up. They're obviously budget strapped, so I kind of get where they're coming from, but maybe I could ask someone from town staff to give them a call, their intergovernmental relations person, and see what's up and what their long-term plans are. So,
great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Additional public comment on consent agenda or non-agenda items?
Hi, Suzanne Zoe Ratliff, 405 South 3rd Avenue. I'm here tonight to address the board about the street replacement project in North Original Town Superior and to suggest for your consideration a possible use for the excess money, which I understand has already been budgeted and may not now be needed because of the lesser scope of that project. The proposal would still, that I'm bringing to you tonight, would still fall in the budgetary category of street replacement. And the geographic area would be the same, only instead of Original Town Superior North, we would be asking you to consider the excess in Original Town Superior South. It would address the previously addressed yet unsolved problem south of the creek. Many of you will remember the street project which took place in Original Town Superior south of the creek beginning in fall 2008, going on and on and on and on. Those of you who are new may not remember this, but it's one of those good stories. And it was finally completed in spring 2009. The purpose of that project was the mitigation of a serious water problem, a serious drainage problem, causing flooding and serious pooling of water in residents' yards in the alleyway between 2nd and 3rd Avenues, and also some flooding of the main streets themselves. After the project was completed, after that long period, what were we left with? Most importantly, we've been left with a drainage problem that has not improved at all. It's changed a little bit, but it has not improved. Flooding and pooling of water in yards and alleyways is as bad as it ever was. Sadly, loss of our beautiful, wide, country-style streets was one of the things that happened. And we inherited instead a set of ugly, non-functioning curbs, which don't do much because the problem's still there. A couple of properties formerly not impacted by the flooding originally are now flooding. That would include mine and several other residents. Loose rock is another item we've been left with. I think it was intended to be decorative, but instead it haphazardly makes its own path in the streets and the yards and makes us look awfully cluttered when we're trying to look a little bit neat. I think it was already mentioned that the entryway to the beautiful open space area used to have these wonderful landscape timbers, and it was all kind of neatly configured, and you could just walk in and feel kind of good about that. That has the same supposedly decorative rock that's loosely flying all over the street and looking kind of trashed out, especially for people who come who are new to our community, and, well, I guess especially for those two of us who live there and loved the way it used to look when it was all nice and cleaned up with the landscape stuff. We've also been left with a strange add-on grass weed combination in all of our front yards along the street edges. So neighbors on all 3 streets have been talking with each other, and I was asked tonight, we all like to think differently in Original Town Superior, but we all were really talking with each other, and we have 2 points of agreement. One is that there's still a serious problem that needs to be mitigated, and sadly it did not get taken care of. And second of all, another point of agreement is that, we all hate the thought that we would get dug up again, but we're all kind of understanding. When you have water pooling and water problems, what does my plumber says? Water always comes first. So I would present to you today a petition from people on 2nd Avenue, another petition from people on 3rd Avenue, because we like to think differently. And Bob McLaren is here this evening, and he would like to talk with you about the situation on Douglas Street. Last of all, I want to say, since all this happened, I'm excited that we have a new Public Works Director. And I'm hoping that he might have some innovative, new ideas about what happened and how this could be taken care of, and that he might have some new collaborative ideas about interacting with community, and maybe this could get solved. And if we have some excess money, how cool is that? So, may I present these to you,
Sure.
Mr. Mayor?
Why don't you give them to Phyllis if you wouldn't mind, just for the record.
Okay, what we have here is the original, and copies for all of you on the board. So Phyllis, would you want to be passing those down, or do you want me to set them around, Chris? Okay, here's the 3rd Avenue petition. And I should say that a majority of homeowners have signed. Everybody has their, and we're going to be Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I suppose I'm the next piece of the puzzle. I'm Bob McLaren, 212 West Douglas Street. And I wanted to bring up the fact that some of the problems that Suzanne has mentioned on 2nd and 3rd, I don't feel applicable to Douglas. We've talked to some of our neighbors, and these things that I'm going to bring up to you are primarily from my wife and I. One of the things that we heard when the 2008 road project happened in South Superior was that the residents were contacted. Now every year we leave about this time and go to Lake Powell, so we may have not been here when they did the survey. But the two issues that I want to bring up, and I'll be brief because I know you have other agendas. First off, I understand that the alley between 2nd and 3rd at Douglas Street terminates at Children Park had to have a low storm drain put in. And what's that caused is it's caused me to have to put in a different entry gate to my property because the gate that I was using off the alley is no longer accessible. I'm asking that the town consider the removal of the curb in that area where I put the gate in and provide some sort of sloped entry in the street along with something possibly either crushed gravel or crushed ground blacktop or even road base in the winter months so I can access the gate. Secondly, the other thing is when they did the project, they cut out part of my driveway. And I spent about between $9,000 and $10,000 putting blacktop in to eliminate the mud. And when they cut out the driveway, they, instead of bringing back in blacktop fines, they brought in coarse blacktop and just rolled it out. So it doesn't match my driveway. And secondly, there's a gap between the old driveway and what they did that collects water. So I'm asked that be fixed properly as well. And those are my only two concerns.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have the same sort of petition.
Yeah, if you would, for Phyllis, thanks. And just, Mr. Randall, would you remind for me about this alley issue? I think that we have it on our agenda to discuss alleys in general. Is that correct?
The alley discussion is actually scheduled for 2 weeks from tonight at the workshop session. The broader view of how the town wants to deal with alleys. In this particular situation, Mr. McLaren was the only one that took access off of that alley. Clearly, after the construction project, that access was no longer viable because of the change in the slope. And if you go back and remember the discussion, it's because we moved the roadway from the design 3 or 4 feet further to the south in order to accommodate the potential for future sidewalk installation on the north side of Douglas. So by designing it on the spot, we significantly altered the pitch, if you will, eliminating his ability to use the gate. At his own initiative, he went ahead and installed a new gate, and we've constructed the curb cut, and I believe there's a secondary curb cut at the new gate. No, that has not been done. I thought there was, okay. Yeah. And we have offered to pay for the second gate. This, in terms of drainage and effectively a new driveway to get from the curb to, is not a problem. I'm not aware of the driveway drainage issue, but we'll certainly have Kurt look into it. Because the broader issue of alleys is coming up.
Perfect. And, when I look at your property, which I've done on multiple occasions, that's clearly has been an unintended consequence of trying to do the right thing. But, you can't get into the alley there because of the pitch, like you say, and the storm drain, I believe, is located right there, too. So I don't know if that's, we should talk about it in the broader context, but I hear where you're coming from, and I think we should do whatever we can.
But these are very reasonable requests,
yes.
Things we should be able to, certainly be able to accommodate and accomplish. I believe Mr. Coer had already had a conversation with you about reimbursement for the gate. He did. I thought the driveway and the curb cut were already done, and we'll look into the driveway drainage and get that fixed as well. Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. Additional public comment on consent agenda or non-agenda items?
Billy Downs with Downs Tennis Academy, Tennis for Everyone, 1869 Spalding Circle. I was here originally tonight because I thought we were going to be voting on the tennis agenda thing until I got an email on Friday night after 5 saying that we weren't. So that's why I'm originally here. And since I had already planned on coming, I decided to come anyways and make a few comments. Most of you know I ran the tennis program for the town of Superior for many years. And last year, at the end of last year, they canceled the contract and had a new company come in. I'm here for a few reasons, just to kind of clear up a few things in regards to why I didn't bid for it last year. And I've actually submitted a new RFP and proposal for this year and things like that. One of the reasons that I didn't bid for it last year is because I actually was told that the town wanted to go in a different direction and I needed to clear out the shed. So that's what I did. Cleared it out. Later, another person actually brought it to my attention that I was told that I should have bid for it and all that kind of stuff, and I saw it on a town board meeting. And I actually wrote a letter to some of the previous trustees and some of these trustees in regards to that, so you guys got that letter and so forth. My concern is just I mean, I live here, I teach here a lot, I teach a lot of the kids, and what I'm seeing that's happening in Superior in the tennis programs, it's actually going backwards unbelievably amounts just in this last year. I grew the program 8 years ago from basically nothing to one of the best programs in the state. We won more state titles last year in Karen USTA. Excuse me, I'm going over cold right now. Karen USTA than any other program in the state, Parks and Rec or private club. To this year, a very minimal program. I mean, they don't even have any USTA teams at all. And I think their CARA is 1/3 of what it was last year. I don't know what kind of results they're having because their playoffs are actually this week. They're actually going on today and tomorrow and so forth. Hopefully they do very well. And at the very last second, when I knew that something else the last person that they had hired got fired and they were trying to start a new program again and they were going to send out the RFP, I submitted a letter saying that I would help with the new program, get people going again and so forth like that. Submit me an RFP, which I did, and I submitted the RFP, which got extended, and then I submitted it again. And I heard on Friday that I was actually the only one that submitted an RFP for the program. So at that point, I just kind of saying, gee, it's like they don't want me back anymore, which is fine. If that's the case, that's the case. But it's just kind of disconcerting as a resident of the thing and of all these students that are calling me and saying, gee, what's happened? And truthfully, I still teach a lot of them, most of them actually. We still have over 200 kids that are taking our program right now, and Superior's not getting any of those revenues. We go through Broomfield, Monarch High School, Horizons, and some clubs and some courts in Louisville, because they'll rent the facilities to us to use it for our programs, and that's what we're doing. When I submitted this letter, I even told them that I would bring my students back, which I did when I first did 8 years ago, brought all those students in, and most of them came back with me. And that's just my concerns. I mean, Superior was such a strong program. People were coming from outside the town to play in them. You know, our outside residency fees were about 20% just because the program was so strong. And now it's kind of gone way back. It's probably worse than it was 5 or 6 years ago. I don't know the exact numbers, but just of the ones I do know, it's just, the numbers are just very poor. It's a whole different scenario of running a Parks and Rec program, public program, than it is to run a private program or a private club. I've done both. I ran this one very successfully for many years, and just for not to keep going on, it's kind of like a child that you grew up and then they're just no longer there, and that's what's going to happen. And I still hear it. I'm actually the president of the United States Professional Tennis Association, the Colorado District, and we see letters and stuff that comes into us saying, gee, there were a lot of programs up in those areas, now they aren't anymore. Where should we go? So we're sending them elsewhere. We look for people that are USB certified, and we tell them to go to those types of programs, which we've always done. We had some people that are in here that were USB certified. There's some that are, I think there's actually, the lady that's in here now is actually USB certified. The previous ones weren't, so we didn't submit them here, because again, that's our organization, so that's what we send them to. Then that's just my concerns there. You know, the program was very strong, and it's just gone weak again. I offered to come back again, and then all of a sudden, more and more paperwork, resubmit stuff again. We extended it. It just seems like they don't want the program to come back. I mean, that's what I'm feeling, and I don't know why that would be. It seems like you would want a program like that to make your town that I live in just better, and so forth. Those are my comments. If I have any questions, I'll be glad to answer why I didn't do this, or why I did this, or why I didn't, and so forth.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Additional public comment? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move to item number 6, presentations, and that's where we've moved the discussion of the interchange landscaping. Director Dominguez or Mr. Randall?
Very briefly, the board had seen the 3 alternative design plans for what we refer to as the McCaslin Interchange landscaping project, and it was over a year ago. At that time, the board showed a preference for the most minimal of the 3 improvements, and for discussion's sake, the costs ranged from approximately $40,000 to over $400,000, depending on the extent of the improvements. The board had also asked the town to approach the city of Louisville regarding their intentions to do comparable improvements on their side of the interchange, and we were rebuffed. So the money was rolled over from 2009 to 2010, and the reason that we have scheduled this brief discussion was to find out if the board has any appetite whatsoever for continuing or implementing the project. If so, we can go ahead and complete it during the current fiscal year. Or if you'd just like to say, hold off until such future time as we know future interchange improvements, until we have a commitment from our neighbor that they'll do something comparably on the other side. But because of the current year funding for this, we were just looking for some additional guidance.
Great, thank you very much. Director
Probably
Dominguez?
stole all of Juanita's thunder.
He does that once in a while. I think I'm going to say the things that, and I'm like, oh, he just said that. But anyway, Juanita Dominguez, Director of Parks, Recreation, and Open Space. Tonight I have John Lanterman with me from Studio Urbanista. Some of you might remember him from last time when we talked about this. What I'm going to do is have him really show you the interchange improvements that we had talked about, slightly enhanced since last year. But what I wanted to do before he came up here was just to say, this is the $40,000 solution. We have about $17,000 in addition to the $40,000 in our tree enhancement program for that area. And so that's why we can do this for $57,000 this year. And then in the future, we can continue to work on this particular area and enhance it with those tree enhancement dollars as they become available each year. So this is the $57,000 approach. We can get it done in the fall of this year, provided that everybody's in agreement that we move forward. So with that, John, if you could come up and show them what we got here.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm John Lanterman. I'm president of Studio Urbanista. We're at 4900 West 29th Avenue in Denver. And what Juanita has said, we were asked to come back. We had done the original concepts that were outlined, and the direction was, let's keep it to the minimal one. And we were asked to come back and put that together in some discussions with Juanita. Juanita said, well, we have a little more money available, additional $17,000. So what you see up here that I'm going to go through and describe is the $57,000 plan, and that includes all the materials you see. It also includes modifying the existing irrigation system that's already in place, which is a big help. We don't have to run a whole new irrigation system. We can just kind of tie into the existing system, which is great. Also, the first thing we looked at when designing this, it's like, well, we do have a bigger vision, or there is a bigger vision possibly down the road for what we can do. So one of the considerations in this is let's give you the most bang for the buck, but also have it fit in to what could possibly be a bigger vision down the road. So this is kind of one way to look at it is phase one improvements that does tie in nicely to other variations that we came up with if and when money might become available in the future. So we are thinking about that down the road. So that's one of the considerations. Two other considerations that go together. And to orient you, that's north.
Could you? I'm sorry. Could,
Stay at the.
if you wouldn't mind, Juanita will.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Oh, the top. Oh, the other top one. Okay. This is US 36. This is McCaslin, north-south. This comes down, the RTD's over here. This is the off-ramp from Boulder. To orient you, this is existing. That's kind of a low area that the best we can determine in talking with staff is a water quality pond that's in that area. So one of the ideas that we have, and there is some pedestrian movement along here as people cross the bridge, come down, they can cross here and move south into Superior. So there is some walking traffic along there. The other thing is the car traffic on both sides is moving much slower in this area, north and south, certainly than it is on US 36. So the design principle we're using here is the slower you go, the more detail and the smaller scale you can appreciate. So what we've done here, there's some existing ornamental trees on both sides, And so we're talking about extending those. It's a smaller scale, finer tree. It's a hawthorn. And then in addition to that, underneath it, there are some plantings. And since that is where pedestrians are and traffic's moving slower, we're enhancing and kind of using what's in place there and choosing plant materials that work with those. So that's the idea on both sides here with the finer scale materials. Then, excuse me, as you're accelerating on or decelerating here, or also going on to Denver on this ramp, we're eliminating additional or we're not including shrubs in this area. We're just going with larger scale trees, because trees, you get the most bang for your buck. They're going to have the most mass, larger scale. And so the idea here is there's a nice transition from larger scale materials, trees, to smaller scale trees here. So even as you're moving along US 36 at a much higher rate of speed, you're still understanding that there is massing and plant materials there, and beginning to give this understanding of the entry or exit to Superior. It's acknowledging the town, really, is what we're doing. So those are the design principles that we're employing here. And also, I believe you've got this in your packets. So we just included the plant materials that we're using here. The autumn blaze maple here corresponds to the red here. It does very well given those conditions, and it also has a really intense, beautiful fall red color as indicated here. On the other side, just to begin to give some sense of enclosure, to help people slow down, because it is going to squeeze in a little, we're just using alternating Marshall ash and also western hackberry, which is shown there. And then there's just some photographs of the plant material, the lower scale plant material we're going to be incorporating on both sides. So I was just asked to come tonight, give you a little overview of the principles and how we came up with this plan. And I think based on the comments from the staff and what I presented, hopefully it gives you a little insight into what's behind the design. With that, I would just, if you have the funds available this year, I would just really encourage you to do these improvements, because as we know, you plant the trees, fairly small trees now. Over time, they're going to mature, grow, and it's really going to help present that entry into Louisville. And there's a saying, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And so this is your opportunity, really, to do that for the majority of people coming into and leaving Superior.
Great, thanks.
So with that, that's a presentation. And on a side note, based on your Dr. Cog comment from earlier about sustainability, if I could, I just wrote the name down of a book that I'd encourage you all to read called The Original Green by Steve Mouzon, that it really frames the idea of sustainability in a very fresh way that would be great for y'all to read. So I'll just give that to her. I guess that would be the best way to get that information to you.
Great, thanks. Director Dominguez, anything else from you? Questions from the board?
Comment or?
Sure. Trustee Rivers.
Well, my comment would be I certainly would not want to wait for Louisville to do their thing on the other side of the interchange. So I would say we need to go ahead and beautify our part of our town, and maybe put some pressure eventually on them to do something on their side as well. But we should take the first step.
Trustee Pennington?
The median that's sandwiched in between the lower shrubs, is anything happening there now? Is that just yellow stripes, or is there median with plant materials in it now?
On the bridge?
Yes, on the bridge.
The median, I believe, starts, again, John Lanterman, starts south of the off-ramp.
So that's just double yellows there, Juanita?
Right, the median starts right here.
Okay,
And that's already, and that piece is already landscaped.
right. And I've done a lot of landscaping. I am not, however, a professional. the double row of maples there, is it necessary for impact to have a double row, or can that be accomplished with a single row?
John Lanterman. I really believe that that's important. There was somewhat of a less than stellar attempt in areas of this interchange on this side and the other with just a single row of trees. And what you'll see, and it kind of gets back to the principle I was talking about earlier, you need mass. You really need mass to even comprehend that there's something there. And so that's why we're doing that double row of trees, and so that you will have that substance there. I mean, one row would be better than nothing, but I think to really have it have some impact and for you guys to really be proud of it, I would really encourage that you do a double row there. Does that answer your question?
Other questions? Trustee Williams?
I'm just going to ask a dumb question here, but does that go all the way around where the double row of trees? All the way around?
The other,
It
yeah.
goes just the trees
Right.
that you see.
It just ends right there.
It ends right there. That's our $57,000 line.
That's not a dumb question.
It wasn't then. All right.
I don't know
was
how to
wondering
put
why
it
I
more
just-
bluntly than that.
Okay.
But we actually did play around with, the best way, how do we maximize the money that we have available, and we really pay attention to that. And we felt we wanted to get that enclosure coming off on both sides, also have enough of an arc that you can begin to pick up that movement, the curve of the on-ramp too.
So
Okay.
we both had the same thought here.
But because I'm sitting here between these two ladies here, I'm going to take both of what they shared. What about if we did one row, but all the way around? If you were to use what would that look like?
Well,
Same amount of trees, same within our budget constraints, but more spread out, I guess. But and again, I'm not a landscaper, but I'm thinking like you think. Does that make sense or not?
I was thinking that too.
You don't ever want to ask a woman her opinion on landscaping.
yeah, well, I actually have for about 30 years, so I know.
It's just a thought. But
No, again, to get back to that other comment about this being, if you want to consider kind of a phase one, we wanted to give you some impact and something that would have some immediate effect. And so in our professional opinion, we think that would do that. I mean, there are lots of ways, and given your direction, we'd be glad to kind of explore maybe alternating or something so that even a future phase could fill in more. But I just would caution you a little bit that if we spread it out and go twice as far, you're going to drive down the ramp and people are going to be driving on the highway, and you wouldn't really go, oh, look. But
Let me just add one thing. Visually, can anybody visualize what it looks like right now?
Yes.
And is it not
It's
pretty?
terrible.
Well,
You
and
can't-
it's
you can't see the trees there.
well, and there are trees in a single line around that circle as it is, but they're far apart. And yes, of course there are some pine trees, but that's kind of the effect that you would get versus what we're proposing here.
You said that there was a bigger vision. Do you have a picture of the bigger vision on
well,
you?
actually, the bigger vision.
If you would, at the mic, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I have my computer. I might
That's fine.
have those. But what it is, what I was referring to is just, more like what you're talking about, taking that double row of trees, taking it all the way around the arc, placing additional trees on the west side of the arc, having more trees on the on-ramp, eastbound. It would just be a more complete landscape in that whole area. So it's taking this concept and extending it as is being described.
Trustee Williams?
So I was just wondering, do you have a visual drawing or maybe a photoshopped image with the actual landscape plan that you have here? Something I can see in more of 3D, so I can, as if I'm driving it.
What we did on the previous master planning exercise, we did do visual simulations of all of those, and as part of this, we could generate that pretty quickly for you, but I don't have that to share with you this evening.
Mr. Randall?
With your,
Go ahead.
oh, with your direction, if you'd like, and again, it would be pretty quick to simulate this versus what I understand is, okay, let's take that same number of trees and take it
Right.
twice as far and show you that, and you can go, oh. But again, you have to be careful with visual simulations because our people are really good at making things look, like they'll look 30 years from
Yes.
now.
Mr. Randall?
As, if the board were to say, yes, it's in the budget, we want to proceed, there are a few next steps. One, we would immediately be going out for bid. Two, because of the dollar value, that bid and the approval of that purchase contract would come back to the board. At that time, we could present you with those two options in terms of the 3D, more the eye level, as well as what the ramifications would be of a single row twice as long versus the double row. The other point I wanted to make was, based on some earlier comments that were made, this is not a general fund area. This is a Superior Metropolitan Improvement District area, or SMID. It's paid for by the interchange funds, which come out of the Superior Marketplace, the supplemental property tax, the supplemental sales tax that have been devoted to amortize the interchange as well as maintain the area. So we're not talking about 3 parks, we're not talking about trailheads. This is money that can only be spent within that geographic area.
So is it in the SMID budget for
Yes.
this year?
It was originally in an 09. The board said, we're not prepared to make the commitment yet. We'd like to see our neighbors to the north do a comparable improvement. And of the 3 plans, the 40, the 200, and the $400,000 plan, the board at that time said, we like the minimalist approach. But we can bring those things back to you at the time that you get your bids, if the answer tonight is even yes. And if it's no, the money doesn't get spent, it gets maintained in the SMID budget. We can use it for the northeast loop when we get our way on that.
And so it was budgeted for 40,000?
Yes.
Correct, okay. And the 17,000 is what's already budgeted for maintenance of that area?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Just no questions or comments? So I agree with Trustee Gross. I mean, we could wait till the cow jumps over the moon and for Louisville to get, I don't want to be berating our neighbors. They have financial constraints and, they can't probably do as much as we can right now. As town manager says that we're doing relatively well. I don't see any reason to delay doing an amenity for the town based upon what our neighbors may or may not be able to do.
Do we need to vote on this? given
No,
that
I
it's-
think you have
Just
a general.
looking for guidance.
Is anybody fundamentally opposed to having
No,
this
I
done?
think it's a great idea. It's going to make us look better.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think,
You
I
have
think
the
that's
green light.
direction.
My only thought is I don't feel there's an urgency.
No, there's no crisis, you're right. So,
But
but yeah, so I
the
think
sooner you
the,
plant the trees, the sooner you're going to start seeing them grow. So that's the other.
so the bids, the photo simulations and alternatives will be helpful.
Plant the trees 30 years ago, the second best time is today.
Right,
Exactly. There you go.
I think I'm going to put it as, if it doesn't get done this year, it won't be any shakes off
Yes, you're right.
anyone's back here.
You're absolutely right. Okay, thank you very much. That brings us to the consent agenda, and the only thing on the consent agenda is approval of the minutes of July 12, 2010 Board of Trustees meeting, and if I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by Trustee Gross, second by Trustee Williams, further discussion, all in favor? It's unanimous, thank you very much. That brings us,
I'm
I'm sorry, abstaining from the minutes. Okay, thank you. That brings us to item number 8, which is an adoption of a resolution approving an agreement for solar installations at the water and wastewater treatment plants. Mr. Randall?
A little bit of history. Dating back a little over 2 years, the town board had adopted a goal which said within the next decade the town wanted to be energy self-sufficient. While the term energy self-sufficient is probably a misnomer, since we would never conceivably be off the grid, It has been somewhat modified to now say at least energy neutral, to the point where we are producing more than what we are consuming. You know, the first phase of our solar initiatives were the installation of 5 rooftop solar systems, PV solar systems, on 5 of our municipal buildings, most significantly our 2 pools, Town Hall, the Annex, and Fire Station number 3. The second phase, which we've talked about long and hard, has been for some larger ground mount systems. Tonight, the first action item that we're asking is for the purchase of 2 97 kilowatt ground mount solar PV solar installations. Solar system sounds so planetary. One for the installation at the water treatment plant, one for installation at the wastewater treatment plant. They have been sized just under 100 kW in order to maximize our eligibility for the XL rebate programs. And as the report indicated, they will produce approximately 10% of the energy that is consumed at both of those locations, and roughly 8% of the town's total energy consumption. Another significant step towards that energy independence that we're looking to do within the course of the year. We'd solicited proposals over a year ago for a variety of solar installations, had a number of very qualified respondents. When we did the rooftop, we hired a group called Standard Renewable. Because of the time that has lagged between that request for proposal, we went back to the market and said, what is your best price for these systems now based on current market conditions? And the price for these 2 installations dropped from $1.125 million to the price that's in front of you tonight. The purchase of these systems for $798,000. There's a parallel item that we'll get to in terms of the financing plan, but our recommendation now is to enter into a purchase agreement to acquire the 2 97 kW systems from Bella Energy. As the report indicates, delivery of the panels is expected within 30 days, commencement of installation immediately thereafter. We expect the entire system to be operational no later than November 1st of this year.
Great, thank you very much. Questions from the board? Could you do me a favor? Do you have we have a picture in our packet, but do you have the availability to show exactly where these
I'm
installations
sure Mr.
are?
Magley's prepared for most any question the board might ask.
I suspect that he is.
And you have seen these many times over the years in terms of what our solar plan was.
I'm sorry, Matt Magley.
Introduction.
Matt Magley, town staff. What we have here is the water treatment plant. And this is kind of a rough design of what it's going to look like with the plant building here and the access road here. And I've got another
And
kind of this kind of gives you a better idea of the location. You
Right.
see the reservoir here. This is McCaslin heading north, and Superior Point office buildings here. So this location here is where we're looking at, which is a good slope for the panels with what we're looking for, maximize the efficiency of the panels at the water treatment plant. And we're looking at about 341 panels total on each site. So this is the water treatment plant. And at the wastewater treatment plant, we have, this is kind of a rough design of what they would look like. Right here is the access road that takes you to the Flatirons Mall. When you come off of 36, you come around and then you look to your right and you see our plant. Most people don't know it's a wastewater treatment plant, but there it is. You have the 2 ponds. And this is a good location. Saddlebrook is up here, and I'll go to a different screen that kind of shows you overall. But I want to show this one because we think this is a good spot because of the hill, and also we think we'll get some additional efficiency with the sun reflecting off of the ponds, onto the panels. And let me see, I think I have a better shot.
So this is gives you a bigger picture. This is the hill we were talking about, the 2 ponds, the road, and then Saddlebrook is right here, and this is the access to the yard for CoCal and then the facilities.
So thank you for doing that. So I drove around these sites today, and I think if you could just assure me what my impression is, that you can't, from Saddlebrook, I think it's not visible, or at least minimally. Is that true?
Right, because these units, because of the way the hill slopes and the way the panels slope, you're going to be looking right over the top of them if you look in this direction.
Right, and for the water treatment plant, it doesn't look like that's visible from Key Bank, which is, it's right on their boundary, but I think the slope goes directly down.
And because you have the Ridge townhomes down here.
Right, and it looks like it's...
And so they're blocked mainly by this building here. And then Key Bank, you got the same thing where you've got a slope and
you look
looking
over it.
basically over.
And it doesn't look like you can see it from, as far as I can tell, from the Ridge condominiums, at least minimally.
And so you can see how low the panels are and the way they're sloped. So, yeah, I think your observation is correct.
And if I could just ask one more, do these things cause glare? I mean, is there a reflection off these that would blind any person or
or bird?
Well, you know what I mean. We don't want unintended consequences where there would be light bouncing off these things and causing an annoying effect for somebody.
Right.
Is that an issue?
I don't believe so. Jeff Altman is here from Bella. Do you know Jeff?
No, I'll
Jeff, I gotta.
Sorry.
And if you go down to the our sites where we have,
I haven't noticed it.
Yeah, you go to the pools, you don't really notice a glare.
Hi, Jeff Altman, Bella Energy. If you've been out of DIA, you'll notice that there are megawatts of solar panels at obviously a very sensitive area, which is airplanes landing. and I've never heard of a single complaint about reflection coming out of the panels themselves. They have a dull black finish on the surface, and the glass itself, even though you can see a reflection there, is not going to cause glare or anything that wouldn't be aesthetic.
Okay, thank you very much. Trustee Williams.
Are they the exact same that are mounted on the roof of the pools?
No, it's a different panel.
Just slightly different?
Yeah.
And then on where the Ridge condominiums are, there's a slope downward. So can they see them from there?
No, and I talked to Karen Kinney. She was the HOA president for the Ridge last year when we were talking about doing this, and she had one of her questions was exactly, she wasn't sure where the location was, and once I told her that it was
north of the building.
Yeah, north of this building here, she had no concerns.
Additional questions? Trustee Williams.
Can we get into the financial part, or are you not done with that?
They're all part and parcel, so
Certainly.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, should I wait on this comment?
No.
Okay. So I'm kind of just a little bit confused, and I'm going to recap what I think I got out of this. And if you could tell me I'm wrong, I would love that. So we're borrowing $798,860 from Key, correct?
Yes.
Which in turn pays Bella Energy to
Yes.
complete the project. Okay, and then we pay the lease agreement, which is a total of $193,560.
Yes.
When it's concluded with the lease in 5 years.
Correct.
Okay. And then all the rebates and credits go to Key. And when deducting from the $798,860 from Excel, with the Excel rebate, which is $388,
Correct.
no change, and the federal tax credit of 30% of the total project cost, it comes to roughly $171,000 that Key is actually financing to the town.
Correct.
Okay, which that amounts to a total payment of $193,620 of what it costs to borrow, basically.
Correct.
So Key gets somewhere in the neighborhood of $22,418, right?
My number was 21. Yes.
Okay, all right, so I'm off just a touch. So that's the gross revenue that they receive from the lease entirely?
That's their
Entire
interest.
project.
That's their interest, which works out to about 2.2%,
Okay,
based on the amount financed and the term.
okay. And I'm assuming the life of the project is 20 years?
25.
25.
We've run a financial pro forma showing 30, but the reports that we've received, and that's why I indicated that we expect this to produce a profit to the town in excess of $500,000 over its useful life, which is a minimum of 25 years.
Okay. And so this is where I get a little, it gets muddy for me. The 14,000 roughly of annual electricity savings.
Yes.
Plus the RECs, which is 22,000 or something like that.
Correct.
Times the 5 years, or is it times the 20 years or 30 years?
Times the 25 years.
25 years. So does it basically, we're getting at somewhere in the neighborhood of $650,000 free of equipment, correct? Is that a good way to put it?
We're buying an $800,000 asset, and we're paying $192,000 for that asset. We're paying 24 cents on the dollar for the original purchase.
Okay.
And on top of it, it's going to save us $14,000 a year on our annual electricity bill, and Excel's going to pay us a renewable energy credit or REC credit of $22,000 a year for us putting solar at our water and sewer plant. It's net cash positive day one.
And that is not shared?
Not
That
sh-
is totally the town's?
That's totally the town's.
Okay.
So our
All right.
payback is just over 5 years.
No,
No.
One day.
25 years. Well,
no. We're making money day
Day
one.
one.
It is cash positive day one because of the rec credits, which exceed what our monthly or what our annual lease payment is, what our obligations are for system maintenance. We're still ahead, and we're even amortizing the anticipated replacement of the inverters, which is roughly a $90,000 hit, if I remember correctly, that we would expect to do on a 10-year cycle. Factoring all of that in, we're still cash flow positive first year and every year thereafter.
And that would be the reason to lease it as opposed to buy it outright?
No, if we bought it outright, we would not qualify for the 30% federal tax credit because we don't pay federal taxes. We needed a third party in order to take advantage of that.
That was my
Okay.
question, yeah. Why the lease part?
so my only calculation
Thank
was
you for the softball. We would qualify for the Excel rebate regardless of ownership, but we can't take advantage of the federal incentives that are available for alternative energy because we don't pay federal taxes. That's where you bring in a third party.
The interest cost.
Trustee Gregores?
Oh, I would like to make a proposal unless there's more discussion.
Well, let's see. So I asked the town manager a couple of questions, and I think that you probably know where I'm going. So there's, in the document, in the lease agreement, it says that we need to have insurance to cover damage or whatever, and your answer to me was that we have more than enough insurance for that.
Yes. There will be, annually, when we do our insurance renewals from all of our carriers, we provide an aggregate amount of covered property. We're going to be adding $800,000 to that schedule of inventory of property, which is every building and every vehicle and everything that we own in the town. We will be adding it. I believe Mr. Nillis assumed that the cost implication of that was between $400 and $500 when you amortize or you split up how we pay for our annual insurance costs.
Okay. And then there's a comment that we needed to have a letter from our special counsel. You look very special to me. Did we need any?
I feel special.
I assume that you're our special counsel for this, and you're comfortable with all this.
Yes, there may be some minor modifications to the letter that I actually put in my letterhead, but yes.
And I don't
We've been going back and forth on the agreement, so
Perfect.
I've reviewed it carefully.
Perfect. And there was also a note about having to, if they didn't qualify or get all of the rebates by some time, then our payments would would go up.
Would be altered. If they did not get the $388,000 from Excel, that would have to be amortized back into our 5-year lease payment. We have a written commitment from Excel that we received last January when we originally applied for this rebate program, and it's a commitment that's good for 1 year. The system has to be operational by January 1. Again, our schedule says it's going to be operational no later than November 1. So we're very comfortable that we, and by assignment, Key will be getting the $388,000 from Excel. And as an example, we received those within 45 days when we did the rooftop installations.
Okay, so no risk associated with that figure as far as you can tell?
Very little, virtually none.
Excel's involved.
Okay, yes, an excellent point. And then I have to say that there's a whole bunch of legal gobbledygook in there, for lack of a better, and I assume that the town attorney has perused all that language and feels comfortable with it all.
Yes, we actually did. There was a lot of back and forth between Key Bank's attorneys and me, and we got it all worked out.
You gobbled and they gooped.
They go,
Exactly.
yeah, for lack of a better term.
I'm not responsible for authoring the document, but I am responsible for editing it.
Very good. All right, thank you. That's all of my questions. Trustee Williams.
One more comment. I just want to say that this deal is too good to be true, incredible, well worked out. I just have one little minor thing to note. Having gone through all that math, if there was a more simpler way of looking at it instantaneously, that would have been good. But it took me a while to get there and realize how incredible the deal was. And I don't know how anyone else felt about that. Was just my thoughts. But after reading it and literally writing all the figures down, I realized it's incredible, which I give you.
We're not
all
into
your staff.
We're not into
Kudos.
the Key lease agreement yet, but first of all, we have executives at Key to thank for this. And as we described it towards the end, we were their guinea pig. They are getting into a whole division of governmental alternative energy contracts. When we first met with Key, they said, we're not interested in anything less than $50 million packages. If you're interested in aggregating that and going and talking to your friends and neighbors about putting something together, we can talk. Then they came back and said, if you don't mind, 1, you're our host community, and 2, if you don't mind being our guinea pig, and that's why it's taken so long to get here, in terms of the contract, all of those things, we can be the mutual beneficiaries. I don't know that anybody else is going to get a deal like this, but I could say, and I would ask Jeff if he might have some testimonial, I'm not aware of anybody that's getting solar under terms and conditions like this. We know what DIA is paying. We know what every other municipal contract, Boulder County, Boulder, everybody else. There's nothing that comes close to this.
So I had any other comments? So my comments were, one, for just the installation. Thanks to town staff for looking at this. And in terms of our green initiatives, I think it's a great for our community and for the globe in general. So thank you very much for that. And wow, great job on the finances. It's just hard to believe it's this good. So thank you for all your hard work, and it's an impressive project altogether. Additional comments? Entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution Number R-41, Series 2010. The resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving an agreement with Bella Energy for the installation of photovoltaic systems at the water and wastewater treatment plants.
Motion by Trustee Gregorius. Is there a second? Trustee Williams. Further discussion? Phyllis?
Hanson?
Yes.
Muckle?
Yes.
Pennington?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Gregorius?
Yes.
Sorelli?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries. I'll entertain the second motion regarding the finances.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Town of Superior Resolution Number R-42, Series 2010. The resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a lease agreement with Key Government Finance, Inc. for solar installations at the water and wastewater treatment plants.
Motion by Trustee Gregorius. Is there a second? Trustee Williams. Further discussion? Seeing none, Phyllis?
Williams?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Yes.
Mokel?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Sorelli?
Yes.
Yours?
Aye.
Very good. That motion carries. Thank you very much. Anything else to come before the board this evening, Mr.
No further
Rangel?
business.
Seeing none, meeting adjourned. Thank you.